an SS-rank dungeon known as the Yggdrasil Labyrinth was mentioned. It was further explained that Yggdrasil is the world tree located at the center of the universe and is the foundation of all 9 worlds. It was noted that this was one of the 7 most difficult labyrinths in the world. All 7 labyrinths are unexplored territories with secret treasures. It was reported that a month ago, having cleared the ranked dungeon and obtained the right to SSS ranks, they will now go to the Yggdrasil Labyrinth. The hero is part of an A-rank team called Gunkino-Dongwa, and it has been emphasized that each member is a true professional. The blood of an ancient witch flows in the veins of the black magician. At the same time, the word witch was called inappropriate. An enchantress who is a master of the dual blade. She applies lightning and wind elemental enhancements to her swords. She has declared her opponents vulnerable, calling them small fry. She is also called Sword Saint Himeno. The guy who struck exclaimed, pointing to a defender with a large build and muscles, who is capable of delivering devastating blows. This defender is called Warrior with a Great Sword, Suglinste. The hero exclaims that he likes it when the sword cuts through someone's flesh. The guy with the sword angrily orders it to be burned. Their leader Loki is a genius in everything, fighting power, leadership abilities, and magic. And finally, the healer white magician, Ray Dean Hewell. The boy called Ray anxiously. The guy is confused about why Ray is standing and asks him to use healing since Himeno's leg is injured. The girl called Shublins to Blowy. Himeno said that her leg was just a scratch and didn't need healing. But the guy insists on healing to be on the safe side and calls Ray again. A guy with a backpack came running, bent over the girl's wounded leg and began to heal, waving his arms. Out of breath, the guy said that he had one problem and suddenly fell on the girl's leg. The heroine was outraged and did not want the guy to fall on her. She felt disgusted. She got up and left. It was the worst day of her life. Loki excitedly asked if Ray was okay and gave him a glass jar of liquid. They tell him that it was a potion that restores strength, so that he will feel better, and they pour it directly into his mouth. The guy apologized to Loki, because he had to spend his item because of him. Both girls and the guy with the sword watch all this silently. The dark-haired girl is silent, and the second calls him a burden. The guy laughs and tells the guy that he is too kind. Ray is angry about this. But Loki tells the boy to ignore them and just rest until he can move. His fatal problem is that he uses up all his magical energy using the healing spell once. His magic capacity is lower than that of a normal person, no matter what the wound is. He will use up all his power per spell. If the magic is exhausted, he cannot move at all. This is a problem for a white mage. He can only heal one person at a time. It's pathetic to the point of horror, and besides, he doesn't have the physical strength to compensate for this deficiency compared to the other party members. His combat power isn't even close. However, despite all this, Loki still invited the main character to his team. Ray stands up and looks at his shaking hand, thinking that he doesn't know why, but he's recovered enough to walk. Loki approaches the guy and asks him if he can walk. The guy says that he is already fine. He will catch up with them now. Ray begins to walk towards them slowly. Despite all this, the main character is happy. Because he chose it, this team is the only place where he can be himself. The girl with 2 ponytails sighs in displeasure, and the guy tells him that he is only getting in the way. Loki announces that it is time to go down to the next floor. Their goal is to get to the very bottom level. They must become the first group to conquer the Yggdrasil Labyrinth and take possession of the secret treasure. And it should be easy. They cleared the A-rank dungeon without any trouble. There shouldn't be much difference here. The group goes forward, Ray stays behind and stays silent. The guy thinks that he should try his best not to become a burden to them. At that moment, they didn't know yet. They didn't know the real horror that awaited them in the SSS-rank dungeon. They found themselves on the 125th floor. A broken sword falls to the ground. Someone curses out loud. Everyone stands there exhausted, and the guy tries to catch his breath, asking what just happened. These monsters were at least S-rank, if not stronger. A tired Loki tries to catch his breath and admits that the monsters will be so strong. All the enemies they had fought before were A-rank, and the difference between S and A was like heaven and earth. They were completely impossible to defeat. The tired girl also reports that this is the worst thing that could happen to them. She does not want to die here. Only on the 5th floor such powerful monsters appeared. But why did this happen? The protagonist is silent. He didn't say a word then. Everyone is in a state of extreme stress, and he doesn't want them to take it out on me. The guy turns to everyone and offers to come back because he doesn't even want to think about what will happen if they find him again. The girl tells them what she knows. The girl sits and says that there is no need to repeat this. She asks how they can return it now. They moved too easily up to this floor. Before they had time to come to their senses, they found themselves at a level from which there was no turning back. Right now, they don't have enough strength to get out of here. Except for one way, it looks like they'll have to use something. The guy is surprised and asks him if he means the stone they found on the lowest level of the A-rank dungeon. The girl says that maybe with its help they can escape from here. The main character is standing. The teleportation stone is a magical artifact that allows the owner to move to any place, but after its use, the magical energy disappears and it can no longer be used again. There are many such crystals in the box. Loki takes one of them and says that they only have 5 of them, just enough for everyone. They say that it is worth thousands of gold coins and is an extremely rare item. But when you have to choose between life and money, you can't hesitate. No matter how valuable the item is, life will always be more valuable. Loki says that the time has come. The protagonist thinks about what time it is. He understands that Loki is trying to get as far as possible before running away from here. If the guy was the leader, he would use the stone right away. However, as expected from the greatest genius since the founding of the Adventurers Guild, Loki Vidrejor is a truly outstanding person. Loki approaches the protagonist, looks down at him and tells him that from now on, Ray is expelled from their team. The protagonist is shocked by this news. The protagonist steps back, asking how this could happen. Then he trips on a rock and falls back. Loki is standing right in front of him. The main character thinks about what Loki just said. How to understand that he was banished. He asks the guy in a stupor about why he froze. Loki asks Ray if he heard what he just said. The guy says that he heard everything. He asks the question about why he is banishing him. Suddenly, a large stone flies into the protagonist's cheek with great force. He falls to his knees and screams in pain, holding his wounded face. His former partner who did this holds more stones in his hands and asks Ray if he really needs to explain everything to him so that he understands. Suddenly, the girl presses her heel on the guy's hand and tells him that he is very stupid and that it is annoying. The girl stands over the guy and tells him that he always looks at her during the fight. She loudly tells him that it is disgusting. The guy tries to say something, but the girl gets angry because he is looking at her again and kicks him in the face. The main character is already completely exhausted and lies there denying it. He was simply watching everyone's movements in order to react faster if someone got seriously injured. 3 former partners are right above the guy and look at him with disgust. Only one dark-haired girl stands aside and does nothing. The main character looks at her but turns away. Loki says that a level 3 white mage is unable to support them in a battle with strong monsters. He can only use healing once, and when his magic runs out, he can't even move. What could be a worse burden? Ray tells the guy that he is actually right. His magic is really depleting quickly. However, he compensated for this with other things, analyzing their enemies to find weak points, gathering information about dungeons for them, preparing food and doing household things so that everyone could travel comfortably. All of this was done by him. But Loki just scoffs and tells the shocked boy that he doesn't seem to understand how much is expected of this team. This group must defeat the demon lord who is threatening the entire world. If their white mage is as useless as him, then they definitely have no future. He points his finger at the main character and tells him that he doesn't have enough strength. The guy continues to lie on the ground. The main character looks at the ground and thinks that maybe he doesn't have enough strength. But why did he choose it then? He imagines himself as a child. When Ray was only 11 years old, why did Loki choose him when he was a servant? At first he was beaten, but then someone extended a hand to the boy. It was Loki. With a sincere smile on his face, the protagonist thinking that there must be a reason why he chose him. The main character asks Loki with a trembling voice why he chose him then. Ray thinks about his value. He wants to protect the place he belongs to. Loki asks the guy if he doesn't even understand that. He really is stupid. Loki says that there was no deep meaning to it. In fact, everything is simple. He needed a cheap servant who can heal other people. When he bought him, he was just a poor E-rank adventurer. He would have taken anyone as long as it was cheap and had the skills of a white mage. Ray thinks that this can't be. Loki thinks about it and says that if he thinks about it, not everyone would do that. He doesn't want to deal with someone as useless as Ray anymore. He spreads his arms out to the side and says that he will choose a normal white mage this time. There are only 3 A-rank groups now. They are one of them, which means they can choose any adventurer they want. Ray clenches his fist. The protagonist thinks that if this continues, he is really being banished. Moreover, he said it right now, which means that he is going to leave him here on the deep floor of the Yggdrasil Labyrinth, where ferocious monsters live. Loki doesn't want to waste the teleportation stone on it, so it's possible he's already found a place where he can get rid of it. The main character denies everything that is happening. While Loki approaches him, the guy thinks that he will die if they leave him here. He does not want to die. He turns to Loki. The main character cries in tears that he will become better than ever if only they don't leave him here. If only they give him a chance to be better. He doesn't want to die. He's scared. Loki asks again about the chance and offers to heal this wound. In this case, Loki pierces the main character with a sword. Suddenly, the main character starts screaming in pain. Loki offers him to get cured, otherwise he will die. The guy is in a lot of pain. The girl is smiling and delighted at how cruel Loki is. The guy next to her laughs, and suddenly the main character realizes in horror that he can no longer breathe. The protagonist's hands move towards the sword stuck in him. He grabs it tightly. The guy says that he is dying, after which he pulls the bloody sword out of himself. He throws it away from himself. Then he breathes heavily and tries to use healing on himself. Loki watches in surprise as light appears around the wound and it heals completely. After this, the main character falls to the ground, and Loki reports that the wound has completely healed. The only thing he is good at is his healing speed. Ray lies on the ground and breathes heavily. The main character thinks that this is not all. This time he cannot just fall. He must get up. Everyone is surprised by his actions. The guy decides for himself that he must prove his worth. The main character barely gets to his feet. Loki is surprised to tell him that he usually couldn't move after that. Ray asks if this is enough, and Loki thinks about it. However, Loki tells him that he was joking, asking if he really thought they would accept him. The guy pushes the protagonist aside. He falls and is told that the magic stone is too valuable to waste on it, and this is also a great opportunity to get rid of it. Loki kicks his blade towards him and says goodbye, the blade landing next to the protagonist. Loki says that this is the knife he gave him. He is just returning it, because without a weapon he will be scared to live here. They tell him that he is lucky. He will be able to survive with this knife. But the girl says that he will spend the rest of his life here. They all laugh and teleport away from here. The main character crawls to his knife and grabs it with tears in his eyes. The main character thinks about why he simply tolerated such an attitude towards himself for so long. He remembers those moments when he was beaten. He endured it only to keep his job, and it still didn't help. The main character lies on the ground and sees a huge creature in front of him and understands that it is a monster. He understands that his body does not obey him. The monster begins to move. Ray breathes heavily and wonders if this is all serious, why he has to go through all this. The main character thinks about his miserable life. His family was killed by monsters. He was made a servant and kept locked in a cage. Then Loki bought it. But everyone took out their anger on him and beat him. He does not understand what the meaning of his life is at all. Then the main character starts to fall somewhere from a cliff. He flies, and blood flows from his mouth. Someone tells the main character that he is a very pathetic person. After which Ray falls into the water and it splashes. The main character thinks about what kind of voice it is. He has heard it somewhere before. Then the voice addresses him several more times and asks him to answer it. Ray is perplexed by this. The guy opens his eyes and sees a blonde girl with big eyes in front of him. She looks at him and tells him that he has finally woken up. The protagonist looks at her with one eye and wonders if she is a girl. She, perplexed, answers him that it is obvious that she looks like a girl. The guy wonders why there is a girl in such a place. She angrily asks him why he is staring at her. She asks him if he is so charmed by her cuteness. He tells her that she is cute. The girl blushes and asks if he is serious. She says that of course she is cute. He can praise her again. The protagonist says that this is not what he wanted to say. Why is someone like her in the dungeon? He asks her what floor they are on. If she knows, then let her tell him. The girl asks him to calm down. She tells the guy that she can't tell him why she's here. but she can tell him what floor she's on. The girl admits that they are on the 200th floor. In other words, this is the lowest floor of the Yggdrasil Labyrinth. The guy is shocked and perplexed by this news. The guy asks again whether they are on the very bottom floor of the Yggdrasil Labyrinth, in which case he won't be able to get out of here. The guy puts his head down, kneeling on the ground, and denies all of this. The girl asks her if she wants to get out of here. He can choose to get out of here, because he got a secret treasure. The main character is surprised by what he heard. Ray asks again about receiving and asks about what and how secret treasure does she mean. The girl says that, of course, she is talking about the secret treasure of Yggdrasil. The girl asks him if he can't feel Yggdrasil's aura. In fact, he was already cursed by Yggdrasil. She smiles and says that his rotten left eye is proof of this. The guy grabs his closed eye and asks what cursed means. She informs the boy that his magic circuit is now linked to Yggdrasil. In other words, he has received unlimited magical power. The girl says that everything really depends on how he uses this treasure. If he figures it out, he can get out of here, so he's basically lucky. The main character continues to look at the girl in bewilderment and asks again about the curse of Yggdrasil, unlimited magical power. Ray asks the girl who she is. The girl tells him her name, Norn. The protagonist asks again about her name. Norn tells the guy that he looks confused. It seems he has heard this name somewhere. The girl is going to do something. She tells the guy that judging by his appearance, he is a white mage. Is this true? Then let him try to use healing. The guy looks at the girl in bewilderment and awkwardly admits that he can use him. The girl looks at him thoughtfully and asks what the problem is. Then he clenches his fists. He admits that if he uses healing, he will use up all his magical power and will be unable to move from exhaustion. And that's why he can't use healing. Norn goes to the guy and slaps him on the head, asks him to just use it. At least try it. She convinces the guy to do it. He agrees. The main character uses healing and a magical light appears. Then the girl asks the surprised guy how he feels. The guy touches himself with his hands and reports with surprise that he doesn't feel any fatigue at all. Ray looks at his palm and asks what is going on because his magic power has not disappeared. Norn stands in front of him and laughs, cheerfully informing him that this is not all. She asks him if he feels his body overflowing with magic. In fact, this is the magical power of Yggdrasil. The guy says this out loud in surprise. The girl reports that, as she already said, his magic circuit is now connected to Yggdrasil. Usually, magic power flows from the core of the magic circuit, which is the gate for magic. The core of magic power cannot be restored so easily by normal healing. However, when he was carried away and ended up here, he received the curse of Yggdrasil, which switched his magic core from his left eye to Yggdrasil. The protagonist holds his eye with his hand and asks if this means that, as long as his magic power comes from Yggdrasil, he can use magic as many times as he wants. The girl says with a smile that this is exactly how it is. He can use unlimited magical power as much as he wants. The main character asks why this happened, what connected him with Yggdrasil. The girl asks him if he really wants to know. The guy hesitates but says that of course he does, because ultimately it concerns his own body. Besides, she said that he was cursed. The girl reports that the reason is connected with this source. The girl asks him to follow her. Norn takes the protagonist to some body of water and tells him that he was swimming here and she pulled him out. He drank water from it when he was carried away. That's why it happened. He asks if it's true. The girl with a smile says that this water is one of the secret treasures of Yggdrasil, the tears of the world tree. They say that this water can even resurrect the dead. She has something else to say. She tells the guy that the tree he just leaned on is the world tree that forms the dungeon. The main character is surprised to report that this is the very same world tree, the lowest level where no adventurer has ever reached, the treasure of Yggdrasil that everyone is looking for. Now it is clear to him. Ray reveals that the secret treasure of this dungeon is a source born from the world's work, an unlimited magical power. And he managed to obtain this treasure. So this is the power of the secret treasure of the SSS-rank dungeon. The girl tells him that her garden is an SSS-rank dungeon and asks if he's joking. The protagonist asks again about the garden, and it seems he finally understands what's going on here. And now he's interested in learning more about this girl. The protagonist remembers that the girl could not tell him why she was there, but she could tell him what floor they were on. The protagonist turns to Norn and asks if she is alone here. She reports that there are no other people in this dungeon except her. He asks Norn if she has survived here all this time alone. The girl sighs pleasantly and admits that she is actually much stronger than she looks. The guy asks about the strong one. He can hardly believe it. Of course, age is not always related to strength, but she looks about 12 years old, and this dungeon, as far as he knows, has an age limit. Norn asks about his look. Does he not believe her? The girl admits that she can instantly defeat S-rank monsters. The guy says that no, because this is too much. Even their group did not have a single chance against S-rank monsters. However, considering how he looks, he finds it hard to believe. But it doesn't matter, he's already got his answer. He decides to leave it already. He wants to get out of here. The main character silently looks somewhere up. He thinks that he wanted to go outside, but to do this he needs to defeat S-rank monsters. Even if he has unlimited magical power, he is not a swordsman or a battle mage. He is just a white mage. He can't imagine how he will get out of here. The main character looks at his hands. Even if he gets out, what should he do next? Because if you think about it, he's already been kicked out of the group. He has no place to go back to. He has nothing at all. A tear is running down his cheek. The main character wipes away his tears and thinks that since he has nothing, maybe he should just stay here. Ray reflects on the fact that spending the rest of his life in this dungeon and then eventually dying might be the happiest life he could ever have. The main character clenches his fist. He can no longer save people. The guy wants to say something, and the girl looks at the guy with interest. The protagonist points to his cheek and asks if he can live here. The girl says that he can, but then it dawns on her, and she asks in shock if he is going to stay here. Ray admits that he might be here for a while. The girl asks him if he's serious. Didn't he say he wanted to get out of here? The protagonist takes his knife and apologizes for changing his mind. If she doesn't mind, he wants to live here, by the way. What does she eat here? She tells him that he changes his mind so easily, but so be it. She is going to say something about food. He doesn't really need to eat here. The protagonist is surprised by this news and asks again. The magical power of Yggdrasil supplies his body with everything it needs, so he will not die even if he does not eat anything. Small wounds heal very quickly. It can be said that he is now in a state very close to immortality. The protagonist looks at his hands in shock and asks about immortality. Norn says that he is very close to immortality, but if his head is cut off, he will die. The girl asked him to use healing so that he could feel the magic power of Yggdrasil, but his wounds were already healed before he cast the spell. If he decides to stay here, he will understand everything himself. He asks what she means. The girl admits that he is a weakling, whether he stays or leaves. Now he is just food for monsters. Monsters can come here, so in the end he will have to become stronger in order to survive here. So it's not a safe zone. Well, then that would be too convenient. He realized he'd do his best. Norn says that's great. She'll teach him the basics. The guy doesn't know how strong she is, but he needs to become strong enough to not be a burden to him. He doesn't want this to happen again. The main character promises himself that he will become stronger. About 3 years have passed. The main character is standing right on the 180th floor. Some kind of sound is emitted. The protagonist grips his weapon tightly and looks off to the side. Suddenly, the ground beneath him begins to crack. A huge monster, similar to a giant snake, bursts out from under the ground. The main character flies up in the air and looks at the monster. The tip of the snake's tail turns out to be very sharp, and she's going to attack the main character with it. The tail is already right next to the main character, but he concentrates his magical power and attacks the monster in response. After this, the snake begins to scream. The severed tail falls to the ground, and the main character jumps along the monster's back. He then appears right next to her face. Plunging his sword into her forehead, he looks at the snake and apologizes to her. Suddenly, the sword in the snake begins to glow, and a shockwave occurs which manages to defeat the snake. The snake falls to the ground, leaving a pile of dust. The protagonist successfully lands on his feet, looks at his hand in surprise, and realizes that he has finally defeated him. He clenches his fist joyfully. The guy happily tells Norn that he did it. The girl sits and also rejoices, telling Ray that he is already a completely different person. He defeated the Lord of the 188th floor, the Shadow Viper. The protagonist strengthened his body with a magic power of Yggdrasil and directly released the magic into the enemy's body through the blade. Norn reports that he has become better at controlling his magic power. The girl jumps right up to the main character and tells him that he has grown significantly compared to what he was 3 years ago when he first started training. The protagonist says that he doesn't even want to remember that time. Norn says with a smile that he was even killed by a small monster over and over again. The guy remembers the rabbit and thinks that even though it was small in size, it was an S-rank monster, an arc rabbit. If not for the power of the secret treasure, he would have died without even having time to properly train. The reason he was able to become stronger was because he could use healing infinitely thanks to Yggdrasil's magical power. Thanks to this, he could experiment and accumulate experience using a semi-immortal body, and his precision in controlling his power also increased. As a result, his healing efficiency also increased. Every time he switched the magic circuit, he could restore his lost eye with healing. Norn says that even though he trained under her guidance, she actually thought it would take him 100 years to reach that level. Who knew it would only take him 3 years? The girl tells the guy that he is already a monster himself. The main character says that no, it's just that his training is so good, he thanks the girl. She asks him not to be modest. Suddenly, a voice tells the protagonist that no, in fact he is still weak. He is surprised by this. The main character looks back in shock and does not notice anyone there. The girl asks what happened again. He looks worried. Did he see an illusion again? He agrees. The protagonist reflects on the fact that ever since he came here, he sees a small version of himself from time to time. Ray thinks that according to Norn, this is a side effect to being connected to Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil accumulates and creates life. It is the tree of life, and it is possible that it is trying to attract his life too. The main character thinks about his life. Every time he is on the verge of death, he appears again. Norn reports that she cannot say for sure, but it is possible that the magical energy he receives contains the thoughts of the dead accumulated in Yggdrasil. The girl asks the protagonist not to let them consume him, and he understands this. They train in hand-to-hand combat. Norn admits to Ray that he really is cute, and when asked if he is starting to miss the outside world, the boy smiles and replies that he is not. He then attacks the girl with his foot, but she dodges and flies up. The guy looks up and says that time flies so fast, it's been 3 years since they met. 3 years passed in an instant, perhaps because he was trying to survive in Norn's training. Then it seemed like time had stopped, but now it was flying at high speed. The girl easily defeated SSS-rank monsters. The protagonist has been on the brink of death countless times, but he finally became strong enough to survive here. Ray seizes the moment and is going to attack the girl right now. However, he looks at her and then the girl hits him, asking him not to get distracted during the fight. The blow causes the protagonist to fall to the ground. Norn lands on the ground. The protagonist holds his hit jaw and looks at Norn, who asks him what he is doing. The girl stands in front of him and tells him that she thought he had grown up, but it turns out that he is still a naive boy. The guy thinks that any man would turn away at that moment. Then night falls. The main character lies on the grass with Norn and looks at the sky. Norn notices that today the stars are especially clear. The guy asks her if he was always alone. She asks why such a question. Very few people go into this dungeon, and besides, ordinary people simply cannot take you that far. The protagonist tells the girl that she is right. The Shadow Viper is much stronger than all the monsters outside the dungeon. He died many times before he could defeat her, no matter how much power he has. If you encounter a SSS-rank monster for the first time, it almost always ends in death. Ray asks Norn if she ever wanted to leave here. The girl admits that she can't leave the dungeon. The guy asks if she can't leave. If she could, she would have left long ago. She is strong. Ray thought that she likes this quiet place. Norn admits that it is comfortable here, of course, but that is the only reason why she is here. The protagonist looks at her and says that he understands. The girl sits down and smiles and says that she still wants to see the world outside the dungeon. She asks him if he has anything worth getting out for. Maybe he didn't have time to do something. The main character thinks about what was left unfinished. He is no longer associated with Gunkino-Dongwa. Thoughts like maybe he should return to them when he gets stronger? None of these thoughts came to his mind. Only a weak feeling of hatred and irritation remained in him. He wonders what else he has, why he wanted to die at all. Norn turns to the guy and asks if he has anyone, if there is a person he would like to meet outside the dungeon. The main character is thinking about something and remembers some girl. Suddenly he is surprised by this. The guy turns to Norn, who is surprised by this. He says that if you think about it, he still has something unfinished. He says that he will get out. A red-haired girl with slightly raised eyelids and a mole near her eye. Her name is Nenamoa. Before she joined Gunkino-Dongwa, she was the same as Rei. They were always together in the servant merchant's mansion. Since they were almost the same age, the protagonist called her Nani, and at that time he was always near her. The protagonist was beaten. He thought that she acted like an older sister every time the traders beat them in order to release stress. At such moments, she always protected him and stood in front of him with her arms outstretched. And when the main character, crying, asked her if she was okay, her answer was always the same. The girl with a beaming smile said that she would protect him if one day the window was in trouble. She asks him to save her in trouble. As a servant doomed to be sold, he could not even dream of saving her. The protagonist thinks that she understood this too, and that is why her kindness touched him deeply. When he was a servant and when he became an adventurer, this promise remained unfulfilled. However, now the protagonist finally has a chance to fulfill the promise he made back then. Rei decides to meet her, and if she is in trouble, he will save her. Now he has the power to do so. Maybe with Yggdrasil's magic, he can solve her problem. Then 5 months have passed. In order to get out of the labyrinth of Yggdrasil, he moves towards the exit together with Norn. He moves towards Nanaima. The protagonist stops in his robe and looks ahead. The girl asks him what the matter is. He just thought that this place seemed familiar to him. He asks Norn what floor it is. The girl thinks that 125, the main character says that they are still far from even the middle. Thanks to the magic of Yggdrasil, he does not feel tired physically, but he is already exhausted mentally. Norn reminds that she already said that it would take at least 2 years to get out. During these 5 months, they walked towards the exit without stopping. But almost all the battles on their way were led by the guy. Norn says that this is also part of his training, but she doesn't participate in the fights at all, and it seems unfair. She seems to just have fun watching him fight with all his might against enemies. Although if he is really in danger, she still saves him. Norn reports that it was around the 160th floor, and it seemed funny to see him covered in monster drool from head to toe. Rei says that she should have saved him instead of laughing every time. The girl says that if she saves him all the time, it will no longer be training, and she might even laugh at him because he has become stronger. She says that what happened next was absolutely hilarious. He was so desperately washing his clothes and pants soaked in saliva. And then he got embarrassed when she noticed that she was watching him. She doesn't understand why he started getting embarrassed. The protagonist wants to say something to Norn, but she looks ahead and says that there is a bag there. There might be clothes there. It wouldn't be good if he came out all covered in saliva and blood. If the blood got on his hair, he'd have to wait until it grew back. But at least he could do something about the clothes. The girl holds a bag and says that it is her bag. The surprised protagonist says that this is great luck. He reports that this is why he thought this place was familiar. It is the same place where he was before the attack. Suddenly he hears someone scream. The girl holds some kind of jar in her hands and tells the main character that he didn't even take a change of clothes with him, and there's nothing useful here at all. He underestimated the Yggdrasil Labyrinth too much. The main character with a dissatisfied face says that he does not even know what to say. Suddenly the guy notices someone and is surprised by this. Rei realizes that it is a monster. They met again. Norn asks the guy if he knows this monster. The guy says that you can say so. They have definitely met before. The guy clenches his fist tightly. Then the protagonist takes out his weapon and rushes straight at the monster. He understands that he is unlikely to understand him. But he still decides to say that he is no longer who he was before. He slightly wounds the turtle and lands, realizing that the cut is not deep given the speed and abilities of the Shadow Viper. It caused him a lot of problems, but this monster is stronger than it. However, the main character understands that in fact he is only strong in the area of his shell. The protagonist then holds the turtle very tightly and takes a deep breath, lifting it with his bare hands. After this, the protagonist knocks the monster over and the turtle lies on the ground while the protagonist holds his weapon in front of him. The next moment the monster's head is cut off, the guy sighs and asks Norn how he did it. But she is silent and the guy looks at the girl in bewilderment. The girl tells him that when he gets out, he should make friends. The guy asks why she brought this up. The girl says that she can't explain, but he is reckless, if possible. She wants him to have reliable friends. The protagonist doesn't quite understand, but he agrees anyway. Although he's not sure he'll be able to make friends with anyone, the girl makes a positive gesture and says that he can. He just has to try. Ray says that she says it's easy. The girl laughs and tells him that a person can't live alone. The guy looks questioningly at the girl, who tells Ray that he has a long life ahead of him. He needs friends so that if she is gone, he will still have someone to laugh with. The protagonist asks the girl to stop saying such things and not to bring trouble. Then they silently look at each other. Then the main character squeezes his hand tightly and says that he understands everything and he will try. The girl with the smile calls him a good boy. The guy tells her that she is like a child with him again. But for Norn, he is a child. She happily waves her hands and laughs. The girl smiles and says that it's time for them to move on. She goes and calls the guy to follow her. The main character thinks that if he can actually make friends, he will definitely introduce them to Norn. It would be great if he could introduce her to Nenemoa. He will definitely come back here when he finishes his business outside. Some bird flies through the air and the main character and Norn land jumping off it. They find some beautiful crystals. The girl is standing on a tree while Ray is standing below. Suddenly the branch breaks under the girl's weight and she falls down. Then the girl gets angry at the guy because she appeared in front of him in a revealing pose and he runs away from her. After some time, they already made a fire and sat together happily. After some time, Norn and Ray come to a bright opening and the girl says that here it is, the exit. The main character says that this means that they have finally arrived and the girl agrees with him. The girl says that her work here is finished. It may be strange to hear this from her, because he has an immortal body, but let him be careful outside. The guy is silent, and she asks, what is it? Let him go already. The main character asks the girl to tell him if it is true that she cannot go with him. The girl tells him that he already understood this himself. Since he is a white magician, this body was created by the aura of the dungeon. Her real body has long been dead. In other words, she is just a construct of magical energy. If she goes outside, her body will dissipate and disappear. That's where their paths diverge. And the protagonist apologizes for making her say such things. The girl asks him not to be sad because of this. She feels like some kind of villain. The guy apologizes and says that he will not do it again. Norn laughs and says that it is different. The girl also asks not to forget to visit her from time to time, otherwise she will also be lonely. The protagonist is surprised by this and promises her this. He will not let her feel lonely, and he likes this place and therefore will definitely come back here. The girl says that that's what we agreed on. She will wait, maybe bring a girl, she doesn't mind. The guy is surprised by this before he said that if he manages to make friends, he will definitely introduce them to her. Norn tells her that although his goal is to meet his girlfriend, he should still not forget to enjoy life. The guy promises to try. The main character says goodbye to her and starts to leave. The girl agrees with a smile and asks the guy to take care of himself. The guy comes out into the light and waves his hand to the girl. The main character lived on the lowest floor for 3 years, and let's say he occupied the top for 2. So it's been 5 years since he was outside. Has the world changed now? Or is everything still the same? The more he thinks, the more worried he becomes. However, at the same time, he is in anticipation he will go outside. Then the protagonist goes outside and sees a town in the distance. The guy looks up with tears in his eyes and says that this is the real sky. It seems that his body is happy that he is finally free. Then he hears some sound. He notices that the exit disappears right in front of him. This means that in order to get back in, he will have to look for the original exit. The main character mentally thanks Norn. Then he slaps his cheeks in order to pull himself together. He thinks the first thing he should do is get to a village or city and exchange things for money, and it wouldn't hurt to buy him some new clothes. Then Ray notices some smell and wonders where it comes from, if it's from him. But he realizes that it's not. The protagonist understands that it is the smell of blood and monsters. Suddenly, a man in blood appears near the protagonist. He is cut in half. The protagonist looks forward in horror and sees a dragon. The dragon, or rather a creature similar to it, says that he was told to eat as many people as possible. The order of one of the 4 deadly demons to high officers of the Demon Lord was to take over the capital. He ordered the demons to devour every single person. They do not need the weak. They are demons and must be strong. All the demons under his command began preparing to invade the capital. Raid after raid, demons attacked travelers, merchants, and even robbed them before that. And after that, they killed them and devoured them. This was repeated again and again, but it was still not enough. They still lacked supplies to take over the capital. To prove to the people that the demons were above them, they had to kill and eat even more. There was a cart driving down the street, and a demon watching it from a tree said that they were coming and he would rob and kill them, and several creatures that looked like wolves appeared behind them. The demon also says that he will eat them, and it is very funny. A couple of minutes later, the car was already destroyed. People and horses were dead. One fair-haired guy stood with a sword in his hands and was out of breath. He had no doubts left. One brown horn and a huge battle axe. It was actually a V-rank human hunter, Vegan. Vegan reports with a smile that he seems to have become quite famous among the people. But still, as expected from the products of the company Drave, everything here was really of high quality and with strong magic. The next moment, Vegan strikes and destroys the cart, from which the girl falls, screaming in shock from this. The girl was handcuffed and very scared. Vegan reported that the woman was also not bad. However, there is one nuance. Vegan did not expect that there would be only 3 carts, and even the 2 of them are not servants at all but holy knights. He looks at 2 people, a guy with a sword and his dead partner. Vegan, he says that he thinks it makes sense that after so many attacks they now have hired security. Then the guy starts running away and Vegan looks after him, asking if he is running away. The guy realizes in horror that he has no chance. This is a monster that can cut through armor with one blow. Vegan starts to swing the axe and asks the guy if they are an official elite unit recognized by the king himself. The guy thinks about reporting this to his superiors. Vegan asks the guy if he's sure he wants to turn his back on him, and the next moment he's already striking. Vegan seriously wounds the guy, and he falls unconscious to the ground. Vegan realizes that he is dead after all. Blood is dripping from his weapon. The monster tells us that the holy knights are only cool in appearance, but in reality they are weaklings and boring. He turns around and asks if anyone else thinks so. The girl watches in tears, and Vegan says that men don't taste so good, so let the demonic beasts eat them. He touches the girl's face with his hand and says that she looks very appetizing like that. Vegan says that she has a very cute face and beautiful eyes. He will first take her as a pet and then eat her. The girl asks someone to help her. The monster tells the girl that the current expression of fear on her face is simply adorable. Vegan holds her chin again and tells the girl that it will be a lot of fun. She will live in constant fear that she will be killed. And he will fulfill her whims around the clock. Each of them did this, whether she knew about it. They all begged him to spare them. They really did everything. Vegan reports that people are interesting creatures. They are ready to do anything just to survive. However, he speaks of the face of a man who was betrayed and who then falls into despair. He squeezes the girl's face. The monster says that he simply can't get enough of it. The girl asks him to spare her and Vegan laughs, saying that he will take care of him until he himself starts begging to kill her. Suddenly, the main character appears in torn clothes and seeing them, wishes them a good day. The main character holds his head and apologizes for disturbing them. He says that he is lost. He also thought that maybe she could take him to the nearest village. He asks if it is possible to do this. Vegan answers that it is impossible. The guy thought so. Vegan thinks about who this guy is and when he managed to approach him. Although his clothes are all in tatters, he cannot be fooled. He smells of monster blood, and it smells so strong that you can't even believe who he really is. The girl asks the protagonist not to come closer. He needs to run away urgently, otherwise he will kill him. The protagonist asks again, and asks the girl if he is going to run away. She says that he is hunting her, so let the guy run away. The protagonist says that he understands this. The monster reflects on the fact that this man is acting distant. He does not know why there is so much blood on him. But he cannot leave witnesses here. The monster then decides to let him go, and instead strikes him from behind. Chops off both of his legs. Doesn't kill him right away, then forces the woman to watch as she butchers the remains of his body right before her eyes. He wonders what kind of face she'll make when the one she tried to save is killed in front of her. He licks his lips and gets very excited just thinking about it. The monster says that he will let the guy go, but the woman will stay. He asks the guy whether he will save the woman or run away. Vegan silently asks him to show him a face distorted by the pain of choice. The protagonist agrees, and Vegan is surprised by this, thinking about whether he will just leave her. Not bad either. In return, the monster decides to simply enjoy the suffering of this woman. He decides to attack him. The girl shouts to the guy that he is behind her and that the guy should be careful, but the monster says that it is too late. Suddenly, Vegan cuts the protagonist into several pieces right behind him while he was leaving. The girl screams in horror at this, tearfully denying it. Realizing how cruel it was, she begins to sob. The monster looks at the girl with pleasure because this is exactly the reaction he wanted to see. He cannot get enough of it. Then he approaches the body of the protagonist and is interested in what his face looks like, distorted by pain. However, the next moment, somehow, Vegan's head is cut off and disappears from his shoulders. There's horror on his face. He's thinking about the world turning upside down. He's asking not to say that the guy just cut his head off. He's using healing. The head gets back into place. He holds his head and thinks about what just happened. The main character asks how it felt. Did it hurt? He, in shock, asks the guy about the fact that he cut off his legs. However, the main character stands on them. The monster asks why they are in place. He is sure that he cut them off for him. And in general, what did he do to him? The protagonist smiles and says that he just cut off his head with a knife and then sewed it back on with the help of healing. That's all. Vegan is shocked thinking about healing. It's impossible. He's never heard of such a strong healing magic. Even if it did exist, it definitely wouldn't be called just healing. It's hard to believe. It must be some kind of illusion. An unknown force that he can't understand. But one thing is for sure. This guy is very dangerous. He needs to run, otherwise he will kill him. The protagonist asks the monster what it is. The monster's instincts scream that he is mortally dangerous, but his legs won't obey him. He needs to run. He remembers that he was ordered to devour every single person. They don't need the weak, they are demons and must be strong. The monster thinks that if he escapes, he will end up being killed by 4 deadly demons. Vegan decides that he needs to kill the guy. He demands that the guy not dare to mock him. The protagonist just stands there while he swings his weapon at him. The monster screams that he is a great hunter of people. Some kid can't kill him. The monster thinks that he destroyed 3 trees, killed several holy knights of the capital. He is the supreme demon Vegan. Then the main character makes a blow and the monster's hand flies to the side. The main character asks if he now understands that he is weaker than him. Suddenly, the monster holds on to the severed place and the protagonist forgives him only this time. There will be no second chance. Demon Vegan laughs, gloats, and enjoys what is happening. The main character was sure that he is strong and he is a hunter and the weak are prey. But it turned out that he was deeply mistaken. Ray threatens that if he sees the demon's face again next time, he will not leave him a chance to live. The white mage has realized that he is the weak one and that he is the one being hunted. After the encounter with the demon, the hero approaches the girl and sits down next to her. He is concerned about her condition and wants to make sure that she is okay. Ray tries to say something, but only manages to squeeze out an awkward, The girl is the first to break the silence. She says her name, Liana. Then, slowly, with uncertainty in her voice, she admits that she is a servant. And then she sincerely thanks the hero for saving her. The girl's words cause a great shock to the white mage. Liana suddenly takes him by the leg and asks him to forget everything she just said. He shuddered from the unexpected gesture. The boy calls out to her in confusion. Liana, looking at his legs, cannot believe her eyes. The wounds have disappeared and are completely healed. She asks if his legs were really cut off. Ray wonders in his mind if she really cares about him, if she thinks about others when she's barely holding on. The hero decides to tell her the truth, that he is a white mage and has the ability to heal. The girl screamed in amazement. She began to reason out loud that he himself had cured his legs with the help of healing, literally restored what had been lost. Liana puts her hand to her chin with a thoughtful expression. She can't understand how it happened that she had never heard of such an incredible white mage. Ray, meanwhile, looked frustrated. He realized that he had developed a reflex by training every day for 5 years. Now that he thought about it, he realized that his healing was not at all ordinary. The hero wanted to change the subject. He asks Liana about her plans, what she is going to do now. Looking down, the girl answered with quiet sadness that she didn't know yet. Her uncertainty arouses sympathy in the hero. The white magician could not find words to express his feelings. An image of a girl from the past pops into his head. Liana reminded him of those days of the past. Ray remembers how one day, when he was still weak and helpless, a girl stood in front of him, arms outstretched, protecting him. She was always there, always supporting. Liana anxiously asks the hero if everything is okay with him. Ray realizes that he cannot leave a 12-year-old girl alone to her fate, without a purpose or a place. The image of the girl from the past, Nana Imawa, popped up in his mind again. The hero ponders what would have changed if she were here now. Ray smiles and explains to the girl that he himself is now in search of his place and is going to go to the imperial capital. Liana is surprised by his proposal, silently listening with interest. The white magician extends his hand to the girl as a gesture of invitation. He invites her to come with him, saying that there will most likely be many opportunities in the capital, and maybe she will be able to find something good. Liana looks at him, her eyes wide in surprise. And Ray again thought about Nanaimoa. He wants to become like her, someone who helps others. The young man calmly asks Liana if she likes the idea. Ray thinks that now it is possible. He really can do anything. He realizes that it will be a while before he and Nanaimoa meet again. In a mysterious place, someone is seen walking. Sounds are heard. The place resembles a creepy laboratory. Someone lies exhausted on the floor. In front of him stands a mysterious man in black and a frightened girl. The demon falls headfirst with his last breath. It was another failure. The mysterious man says that he is unable to stabilize the result with this method. But he is not upset because he still has plenty of materials. The girl is a grown-up Nanaimoa. The hero's words appeared that now it was her turn. 2 swords are stuck in the ground after the battle. Ray folds his arms, sighs, and says a short okay. He's made a decision. The magician rises to his feet and addresses the girl. He suggests that she go as far as possible before dark. The hero now has a new outfit that should be suitable for a visit to the capital. He feels a little awkward about taking these things from the carriage without permission, but he has no other choice. After all, he cannot enter the imperial capital in tattered clothes. It is unacceptable. He puts the mineral he found in the dungeon as payment, regretting if it is not enough. Suddenly, the white mage hears Liana's voice. She addressed him, calling Ray himself. Ray was very surprised by such an address. The girl wanted to return to their previous conversation. Liana is embarrassed and apologizes. She admits that she can't go with him. The puzzled hero asks why. He clearly did not expect such an answer. The girl clutches the cloak to her chest and explains her decision by saying that Vegan might appear again if they walk together. Ray asks in surprise about Baigan. Is that really the demon from last time? The hero remembers that very battle. He did not kill the demon, but he instilled in him quite a strong fear. Now he is sure that for some time he will not dare to attack anyone. The magician thought and said that even if Vegan appeared again, it would be easy to deal with him. Liana quietly makes a surprised sound, and Ray, returning to reality, frantically says nothing so that the girl doesn't think about such a thing. He assures her that there is no need to worry about him anyway. The magician tells the girl that she is now free and can live as an ordinary person. But Liana does not agree with him. She says that the person she had a temporary contract with died. But there is one thing. Ray looks at the girl's hand in surprise. There is a mark on her wrist. Liana explains that as long as this evidence exists, she will forever remain involuntary. She will never become independent. The hero thinks about it. It turns out that with the help of magic, you can transfer part of your mana, connecting it to another person, and he can no longer disobey orders. In essence, this is a magical curse. Ray touches his hand with his other hand, regretting not thinking of it. The girl clutches the cape tighter to her chest and says with pain in her voice that a person without a known origin will not be able to find a new buyer, and no one will want to take him because they will not be able to control him and they will be responsible for his mistakes. This meant that without an owner, a person has a sad fate. He will either become food for demons and beasts, or sell his body, or end his life. The hero remembers the moment when Liana screamed at him to run, to save himself. He realizes that even when her own life was in danger, Her first thought was to save him. The mage suggests that the reason she refuses to go with him is because she is afraid of putting him in even greater danger. Rei believed that if Nanaimoa were here, she wouldn't back down so easily. If she had the opportunity to save and protect others, he was sure she would lend a helping hand. And that's the best thing he could do for Liana right now. The hero turns to the girl and quietly asks if she minds. Liana looks at him in surprise, waiting. Rei, with a smile on his face, continues, asking if she would like to sign a contract with him. Liana's eyes widened in surprise. She was confused. She said that her previous master had already died, so they wouldn't be able to go through the official procedure. And if anyone found out about it, Rei could be punished. But the white magician extends his hand to her, assuring her that he knows everything and asks her not to worry. Rei activates the magic and the same mark as Liana appears on his hand. The girl is shocked by what she sees. She asks with wide eyes if this is a mark of subordination. The magician touches his hand and admits that he can't stand the sight of it, so he seals it up using medicine. Bandages are visible on his arm. He says that now everything will have to be processed again as soon as he takes this off. Liana is in shock, still can't come to her senses. It turns out that Rei is not free either. He bandages his hand and says that he was abandoned at some point. The magician asks the girl not to worry about it. Liana tries to say something, but the words get stuck in her throat. At that moment, the hero notices something. He suddenly covers the frightened girl with himself, repelling the sudden attack of a monster that appeared out of nowhere. The heroes stand by the tree. Sounds approaching from the forest can be heard. Rei looks at the monster lying on the ground. More are coming. This is just the beginning. 5 new wolf-like monsters approach, growling and baring their teeth. The white mage guesses and says that Vigan brought them. He is surprised that there are so many monsters left. The monsters growl, preparing to attack. The atmosphere is heating up. Rei gets into a fighting stance and tells Liana to stay behind him. The monsters rush forward. Rei decides to concentrate mana in his leg. He releases it all at once. There is a powerful explosion and chunks of rock burst out from under the ground. Several monsters were defeated by the shockwave. The hero jumps onto one of the rocks. He looks at the remaining enemies and with cold determination says that he is not going to let them through. Rei jumps off the rock and attacks the monsters. Liana hid behind the rocks and watched the magician. The girl is amazed. She thinks that this white magician is not an ordinary healer. Liana thought about it. She looks around and notices a sword lying nearby. The hero with a sword in his hands looks at the defeated enemy. There were still too many monsters left. One of them runs at Rei from behind and he decides to instill fear in them as he did with Vigan. He turns, preparing to attack. But suddenly something surprises him. It was Liana who struck the monster, saving the magician at the last moment. Rei is stunned, unable to utter a word. Liana stands up. She too is surprised by her own actions. Out of breath, she declares that she has done it and grips her sword tighter. Sweat breaks out on her face. After a brief pause, she tells Rei that she will fight alongside him. The magician was afraid for her. He runs up to the girl, not understanding what she was saying. Liana stands in front of the monster and assures Rei that he shouldn't worry. She says she was trained to handle weapons. However, this is her first real fight. The magician was surprised how she was trained. Could it be that nowadays subordinates are not only used for housework or heavy labor, but also taught combat skills? Apparently, a lot has changed in the last 5 years. The wolf-like monsters continue to growl. One of them attacks Liana. She breathes in fear when suddenly a loud sound is heard. Rei rushes towards her and hugs her, shielding her from the monster and repelling its attack. There were too many of them. The mage thought that fighting so many opponents was too dangerous for Liana. The monsters were radiating fury. The hero looked at them with a serious look. The monsters must feel his aura. Strange sounds are heard. The monsters are tense and frozen. Something magical is happening. A mystical silhouette appeared behind the hero and the girl, something reminiscent of the spirits of the dead. Their presence is felt in the air, and the darkness is filled with tension. The monsters, sensing the unknown force, immediately retreat. In horror, they roar and run away, saving themselves by flight. Rei breathes a sigh of relief. It's calm now. He gently tells Liana that everything is okay now and she can relax. But he notices that the girl is a little embarrassed or even scared. Realizing this, Ray moves away from her, apologizing. Liana quietly replies that she says everything, nothing to worry about. The magician carefully asks if she is hurt. The girl assures him that she is perfectly fine and thanks him once again for saving her. After these words, he lowers his head. Something is bothering her. Ray, noticing this, thought about it. He remembers how this girl fought despite her fear, not thinking about her own life at all. She truly believes that she is causing him inconvenience. The hero thought that in that case, he should give her a reason to stay with him. He starts a new conversation about the contract, confessing something. Ray runs his hand through his hair, slightly embarrassed, and says that he has lost his memories over the past few years. Liana is surprised. She can't believe it and asks if he is telling the truth. But Ray was actually lying. Explaining that the truth was that he had spent all this time locked in a dungeon was too much trouble for the hero, and would only confuse the girl. The hero, spreading his arms, answers her with feigned ease that due to memory loss, he knows nothing about what happened. He assumes that Liana understands this much better than he does. He asks the girl to teach him everything she knows. Ray thinks about Nanemawa again. To find her, he needs more information. He needs to know what has happened in the world in the last 5 years. Putting his hand on his chest, the magician offers Liana to share her knowledge, and in exchange, he will continue to protect her. And he is even ready to pay for it. The girl is amazed. She does not understand why the magician tries so hard for her. Ray looks into her eyes and smiles. He says that he just needs her and that's all. Liana asks again with wide eyes, not believing that someone could need her. The hero calmly, confidently, and briefly answers yes. The girl silently lowers her head, trying to cope with the overwhelming feelings. Liana twiddles her fingers and says that if Ray hadn't saved her then, she would already be dead. And adds that if he's happy with those terms, she'll happily agree to the contract. The hero joyfully announces that the contract is concluded. He thanks the girl. Liana thanks him in return and calls him Lord. Ray uses magic and disguises the mark on the girl's hand. Liana sits down by the tree, and the magician, kneeling, solemnly announced that the contract was concluded. The girl, with a smile on her face, thanked him and said that she was ready to carry out any of his orders. Ray nervously shook his hand, refusing. She had misunderstood. The hero reasons why they made the contract. It wasn't because he wanted to be her master. There are actually 2 benefits. Firstly, it will help them sense each other's location. If the girl is in danger or gets lost, Ray will be able to come to her aid immediately. Secondly, this way they will be able to share magical energy and control it. The magician will be able to strengthen Liana's body with his aura and increase her chances of survival. In other words, it will be easier for him to protect the girl. The heroes shake hands. Ray tries to start a conversation, but the girl interrupts him, asking him to call her simply Liana. The young man, with a sincere smile on his face, asks to call him simply Ray. He happily offers to work together. The girl agrees and addresses him as Ray-sama. The white magician immediately corrects her, saying that she misunderstood. He asks her not to add it herself when addressing him. Liana is embarrassed and silent, slightly puzzled. Meanwhile, it's getting dark in the forest, and Ray decides to stop here for the night. The girl objects. She claims that she can go on. But the magician puts up a tent despite this. He understands that she is tired and tells her not to overexert herself. Otherwise, if she goes in such a state, she can hurt her legs. Ray is worried. Liana says that she heard that the monsters that appear here at night are very scary. She apologizes that they had to stop because of her. The system window shows what happened several months ago in the Imperial capital, in Valand Castle. Loki, the leader of the Gunkino-Dongwa team, says that it has been 5 or 6 years since he was last here. That was the day their team was promoted to A rank. Loki walks slowly down the castle corridor. Only a select few are allowed to enter here. Commoners are only allowed in on special occasions, such as when they are being presented with an award. The leader is silent. Every time he comes here, he is overwhelmed by memories. Loki's memory. Someone says the phrase, "God is a man." The king sits in the throne room. Guards are on either side, and someone is kneeling in front of him. The king says that they cannot allow demons to defile the land where the gods live. The king has an eye patch. He gives the order to destroy the demon lord. He says that they are gods and therefore just. The king orders the hero to go and fulfill this destiny. At this moment, the leader of the team, Loki, stands in the crowd behind the hero, watching what is happening. Present day. Loki Vidrador looks away, then looks down at the floor. The king in front of him was talking about him and his team Gunkino-Dongwa. They had conquered several A-rank dungeons and had made significant contributions to the empire. He was giving them a certificate, officially becoming an S-rank team. In front of the king, kneeling, were 3 other team leaders. This time there were 4 teams promoted. Among the leaders were a bald man with scars on his head, a woman with a bandage on her mouth, Loki Vidrador himself, and a guy with a bandage on his face. They all looked at Loki with envy because only the Gunkino-Dongwa team had reached S-rank. Vidrador was pleased with himself and chuckled quietly. He liked the envious looks of his rivals. Loki thanks the king and states that they will continue to do their best to become the Empire's support in defeating the Demon Lord. The king thought for a moment and replied that he expected great things from them and then let them go. The 4 leaders unanimously agreed with their master. Team leader Gunkino-Dongwa walked down the hallway with relief as the official award ceremony was over. He had finally reached S-rank. Loki recalled that in order to become an S-rank, his team conquered 2 A-rank dungeons and completed 3 missions. To become an A-rank, they conquered 4 B-rank dungeons and completed 5 missions. Before that, 8 C-rank dungeons and 5 more missions. It was quite a long and difficult path for them. But now that Loki has become S-rank, the guild rewards will increase dramatically. The Empire will pay additional support. You can say goodbye to financial difficulties. As he walked lost in his thoughts, 2 people appeared in front of him. They called his name. A girl with glasses and a man in armor stood in front of Loki. The man, who had heard the news that the boy had become an S-rank at only 20 years old, called him a real talent. Vidrador thanked him for his kind words, and the girl expressed her admiration, calling him incredible. She noted with delight that most teams still can't even master A-rank dungeons. Loki found this amusing. He enjoyed this feeling. He looked at these 2 and thought that once you reach S-rank, everyone respects and admires you. That's what makes being an adventurer worth it. His mouth twisted into a smug smile. His heart, thirsty for recognition, finally sated. Loki made an innocent face and smiled politely. He said that it was all thanks to his team, that they were very talented. The young man kept talking about how lucky he was to have his teammates and that he should thank them. In reality, he thought that without his leadership they would not have been able to do anything. Vidrador thought that they should thank him. The man thoughtfully began to say that since his team was so strong, then perhaps... Loki listened attentively. The man suggested that Loki's team could one day accompany the hero's party when clearing S-rank dungeons or fighting the Demon Lord's generals. Suddenly, he put his hand on the boy's shoulder and he tensed up. And the man continued to say that maybe Loki's team could defeat the undead horror on their own. He said this very enthusiastically. With a mock laugh, the leader replied that he would try to cope with this task one day. Loki apologizes, saying that his companions are waiting at the gate and with their permission, he would like to leave. The guy in the armor puts his hand to his head and apologizes for keeping him. They say goodbye until they meet again. Vidrador watches them go. The leader says that the old man is boring as always. He is still a dreamer of the unattainable. Loki scoffs at the words about victory over the horror of the undead. Vidrador ponders the horror of the undead. It is a Class A+ monster. It comes in 3 forms, human, beast, and liquid types. Its entire body is covered in poison, and until the core is destroyed, it is impossible to kill them. Loki goes on to say that there is doubt that even the 10 strongest holy knights could defeat the weakest human type, let alone the liquid type. His team wouldn't last even 5 seconds. In addition to their unconventional attack methods, their speed is frighteningly high despite their appearance. Each of them is a catastrophic level monster. He believed that even a hero could not cope with them alone. The gates banged and Loki quickly looked for his team. He thought about the horror of the undead again. It was a high-ranking monster that could only be found in an SSS-rank dungeon like Yggdrasil. The leader laughs sarcastically. He understands that he will never cross paths with this monster in his life. Events in the A-rank dungeon. The Gate of Dream Death. Inside the dungeon, a huge monster attacks Loki. He calls Himeno for help. Himeno holds swords in both hands and prepares to attack. She eagerly rushes into battle and shouts that everything is going according to plan. Himeno accurately hits the monster and calls Sugunsh for help so that they can deal with it together. He rushes towards her and exclaims that the beautiful Himeno has hit the target. Suglin's stay hits the monster with force. He shouts joyfully, thinking that he has won. Loki got angry at him for this behavior. A fang flies out of the monster's mouth like a bullet. He pierces Siglin's stay's shoulder. The monster screams ferociously. The tension in the air becomes palpable. Fail and a new healer appeared. The black mage casts a spell to help the team. Loki notes that Fail did a good job. He stands before the monster. Vidrador puts his hands forward and says that he will finish off the monster with his barrier. After the victory, Siglin Stu's shoulder wound is treated. Meanwhile, Loki tries to reason with him. He says that you can't just swing your sword at this monster, you have to blow its head off. His anger grows because he's explained this 100 times already. The warrior scratched his ear and called the leader a bore. He thinks he won and everything is fine. This irritated Loki even more. Vidrador was thinking about how if Siglin wasn't listening to him, then what was the point of planning anything at all? At this time, the warrior turned to the healer Kanata, asking if she had finished. Kanata is nervous and asks for forgiveness. She needs a little more time. Loki tried to distract himself from his thoughts. He looked around and told the crew that they would continue when Sugun's hand healed. They had a long way to go, and he considered arguing with him a waste of strength. The team is in a rank A dungeon called the Dream Death Gate. Vidrador tells us that 3 years ago, miners accidentally dug up the entrance to this dungeon. A total of 50 people went down there in search of treasures and rare ores, but none of them ever returned. Their team Gunkino-Dongwa was sent here to investigate the matter and clear the dungeon. At this point, Loki wondered what Fail was doing. She leaned over the flowers. The witch uttered the word snowdrop. Vidrador asked again if she was talking about a flower, to which he received a positive answer. Fail touches the flower with his hand and says that these flowers have 2 characteristics. They usually grow in snowy places and can bloom in places with a high concentration of magical energy. Loki realized he reasoned out loud that if flowers grow here, it means there is a powerful monster hiding in the dungeon. He decided to check with Himeno and she said that she was almost sure of it. She also added that her holy sword blessing was reacting too strongly. Throwing up her hands, she asked everyone if this was really an A-rank dungeon. Loki remained silent, and the warrior Suglin Stay exclaimed how that was possible and did that mean there could be a monster higher than A ranks here. Loki thought about the blessing of the holy sword that Himeno possesses. It was a great skill that temporarily enhanced the user's 5 senses, reflexes, and physical abilities. Moreover, it warned if there was an enemy nearby that was stronger than the user. Kanata asked the leader what they should do now. She was scared and suggested that they retreat if it was true, and there really was a monster higher than A rank. However, Loki rejected this suggestion. He says enthusiastically that they will continue on their journey. Siglin Stay is surprised. He turns to Loki and asks if he is in his right mind. Vidrador Sikayat. He found his manner of speaking irritating. The young man steps forward and convinces the team that everything will be fine. After all, they have already gone through a lot of dungeons and defeated many A-rank monsters. Loki adds that they also have Kanata, and she is a talented white mage. He approaches her and asks for confirmation. Kanata is clearly nervous and clutches her weapon. She hesitates a bit and says that she is flattered by such words. With annoyance in her voice, the healer admits that she is only ranked 20th, and she is as far from first place from Rei herself as from the moon. Loki was surprised by what she just said. He says his name in confusion. The leader asks Kanata if she means the former member of their team that they lost in Yggdrasil. The white mage agrees and says that Rei Dean Huel used to be a member of Gunkino-Dongwa. Loki was angry. Could it be that the one he considered a useless clown had the first rank among the white mages? He was confused because he didn't even know that they had a ranking. Kanata clutches her staff. She admits that she has always admired Rei's fighting style. The healer continues to say that Rei hardly used healing but still kept the team on their feet. He instantly assessed the situation and calculated the enemy, finding the optimal solution. The leader tensed, considering her words about why Rei had done little healing. Sodlin's laughter was heard in the dungeon. He could not restrain himself and said that Rei was useless and did not have enough magic for anything. He laughed and continued to say that Ray could and would like to heal, but he couldn't even cast the simplest spell. Loki grinned contentedly, thinking that sometimes fools are convenient because Suglenstay said out loud everything he himself thought. Fail stood silently, not saying a word. Kanata quietly agreed with the statements about White Mage Ray. The healer thoughtfully says that he always thought about how to protect a team. Without wasting magic, he read a lot of books, analyzed everything, developed his own fighting style. She believes that Ray was truly an amazing white mage, one of a kind. Loki was furious. He clenched his fists and couldn't understand what was wrong with her, why she was praising the mage so much. Yggdrasil didn't understand what was wrong with this girl. Kanata says that no one can compare to Ray in terms of healing speed. After all, his healing is special. She says it's instant tissue regeneration. He can even reattach all 4 limbs. What Ray was doing was way beyond normal healing. It was shocking news. Kanata admits that ordinary white mages are capable of accelerating natural recovery at most, and no magic above that level is available to them. Vidra realized something. Loki wondered if they hadn't had to worry about mortal wounds since they started going on raids. Had they gotten S-rank just by luck? The thought tormented him. It turns out that without Ray, they wouldn't have even reached A rank, and they would probably have died altogether. All the team members tensed up and fell silent. The leader, having collected his thoughts, said that it became clear to him. Loki thought it was natural that the team was speechless. They had long suspected that something was wrong with Ray, and now it all came together. It was impossible to ignore. He recalls the words of the mages who died along the way. One of them said that it is impossible to use healing while being bait for the enemy because healing magic requires great concentration. The other one was surprised that the team thought his healing speed was slow since a fracture heals in an hour. He thought it was impossible that the previous mage needed a second. He had never seen such healing magic. The girl also said that the effectiveness of white magicians' treatment depends on how well they know human anatomy. If the magician does not understand where the injury is and how to treat it correctly, he can only make things worse. The last one of them, with his last breath, said that it was impossible to sew on a hand. Loki realized that those white magicians were quite good. He was indignant at the thought. Why didn't Ray say anything about it? Hamino tensed up a lot. She yells at her team to hide quickly. Vidrador is wary of her reaction. Loki stood behind the wall. He asked if the monster was very strong. Imeno nervously agreed. She added that he was alone and that he might be the dungeon master. The leader also became nervous. He asked again if the monster was the dungeon master and why the boss from the lower floor was here on this level. Hameno did not know the answer to this question. She was worried that her blessing was literally screaming at her to run. She felt that this monster was not an A rank, but an S rank. Loki Vidrador was dumbfounded. Could it be that an S rank monster? Suglenst flared up and turned to the team saying that this is the level of monsters from Yggdrasil. He asked the team what they should do. Loki made his decision. He tried to remain calm because 5 years had passed since they challenged Yggdrasil. They had become stronger. They were now an S rank team, and it didn't just happen. The leader declares decisively that they will fight this monster. They are not the same as before. Now they will be able to win. Warrior Suglenst laughed. He shook his fists, satisfied with the leader's words and confidence. Amina was disappointed. She couldn't stand it, but she had no other choice. Fail's face showed concern and she remained silent. White Mage Kanata, with a frightened but determined attitude, said that she would try her best. Loki's gaze was stern. He fiercely called everyone to fight. At that moment, a humanoid monster appeared. Gunkino-Dongwa team was surprised. They recognized this image. It was the undead horror. The monster greeted the adventurers. Loki was terrified. He believed that they would not be able to defeat the undead horror, because even the hero with a full team could barely cope. The monster seemed to be playing with them, asking if they really didn't like to chat. Vidrador came to his senses. He realized that, fortunately for them, this monster was of the human type. They needed a little. Gunkino-Dongwa must be no weaker than the hero's team. Everyone rushed to the monster. Meanwhile, in the dark forest, the full moon shone in the sky. Ray was walking along the path and suddenly heard something. The magician says that apparently he was not mistaken. He knew who it was by its presence and smell. And what's more, it was the most problematic type of the three. It was a liquid type. The monster standing in front of the guy offered him to play. Ray got into a fighting stance. He said that it was the horror of the undead. The events take place about 2 years ago. Fail Black Mage. She stands in front of the most difficult SSS-rank dungeon, Yggdrasil Labyrinth. She was sad. Val remembered Ray. The witch remembered Ray giving her a butterfly-shaped hair clip because he thought it would suit her. Fail was surprised and asked why he gave her this gift. With an innocent smile on his face, the magician says that today is her birthday, isn't it? And anyway, he's been wanting to thank her with some kind of gift for a long time. The black magician, perplexed, says that she did nothing of the sort for him, but the guy disagreed with her. He noted that the witch always helped him out in battle, and also helped him with household chores. Ray insistently asks her to accept the gift. Fail silently agrees. She takes the pin in her hand and thanks him, saying she will take care of it. Ray smiles and says it's just a small thing. In fact, the witch believed that he was wrong. She was the weak one, so she helped him only as much as she could. Fail always knew that Ray was the real driving force of the group, the one who worked the hardest and quietly supported the whole team. She recalls telling Loki this many times, but he never took her words seriously. In the memories of the Black Mage was Himeno. She doubted that the guy was the perfect support. She says that Ray is only good for gathering information and being a decoy. And the leader Loki added that he is in their group, so naturally he should work harder than everyone else. Vidrujor continued. He explained all this by the fact that Ray was the weakest of the white mages. He was not even able to perform simple healing. Loki considered him not strong enough. Sugalen's hit Ray appeared. Therefore, he had to compensate for his uselessness. Since he is a member of the Gunkino-Dongwa team, he is obliged to give his all, even more so. Loki said he had to work himself to the point of exhaustion, otherwise he was useless. And then Fail realized that her words meant absolutely nothing. No matter what she said, they wouldn't take it seriously. And realizing this, she fell silent. Some girl was yelling at her, bringing her back to reality. She was here again. Fail was surprised when she saw the blonde girl, and she said that she saw her last time. This girl turned out to be Norn. She was sitting at the entrance to the labyrinth and smilingly telling Fela that she had come here many times. Norn asked if she was really going to go through the dungeon. The witch asks fearfully who this girl is. Norn scratched her head and introduced herself in a friendly manner as a pretty girl who used this dungeon as her own garden. The girl passes the witch, asking her name. Suddenly, Fail felt something. She was scared. She couldn't move. Could it be magic? Norn said that it was impolite to just ignore her. She turned around and added that she shouldn't dare enter the dungeon. With her current level, she would die immediately. Fail found the strength to resist it. Norn was surprised that she was able to lift it and adds that she is quite familiar with the witch's magic. The girl is interested because Fail was already in this dungeon several years ago. The black mage remains silent. Norn tells her that then, she should have known how dangerous Yggdrasil is. Finally, the witch admits that she needs to be here. Fail desperately screams that she needs to find Ray, to which the girl calmly asks if this is the white-haired white maid. The witch was surprised by the girl's words. Norn asks if she is Ray's friend. Fail hesitantly answers that maybe not anymore. The black mage, with tears in her eyes, admitted that she doubted that the mage still considered her his friend. Norn did not understand. She assures Fail that she came here risking her life to find Ray. She is definitely his friend. The witch clutched her staff and told the girl that even if she gave her life, Ray would not return. Norn was taken aback and told her not to think that he was gone. Fail's eyes widen in surprise. The girl says that Ray is alive and is surprised that she didn't know. With hope in her voice, Fail asks if this is true. How is that possible? Norn convinced her that it was indeed true. Ray was fine, and he himself said that he would live in this dungeon. This news lifted a heavy burden from Fail's shoulders. She says that the witch doesn't need to come here anymore because sometimes S-rank monsters appear here. With relief, Fail says that she understands. Fail is crying. She is happy to hear that Ray is alive. Her staff falls to the ground. She sobs and thanks God for such good news. Norn reasons out loud that if he is a devoted friend who worries about him so much, then he has somewhere to return to. Fail came to her senses and picked up her staff. They were standing at the entrance to the labyrinth, with Norn's backpack next to her. The girl asked the witch if she understood correctly. She wanted Norn to leave these things on the 125th floor, near the waterfall, for Ray to pick them up. She was confused. Did she want to give something else personally? The black mage explains that the backpack belongs to Ray, and she doubts he will even use what she has prepared for him. Norn was puzzled. She doesn't quite understand, but still agrees to do it. Fail thanks the girl for her help. Norn handed the soul stone to the black mage, saying that it was a rare ore that could only be found in this dungeon, and it should be worth a decent amount. Fail asks again if he can definitely take it. Norn confirms, but asks for something in exchange. She asks that if Ray suddenly decides to return to their world, that she will definitely take care of him. Black Mage Fail agrees and squeezes the stone. She thanks the girl again, turning to her, the ghost of San. Norn was surprised and asked her never to come back here again. Fail found out that Ray was still alive, and it was like a salvation for her. But she still felt that it didn't change the fact that she had done the unforgivable. She felt that she had to carry that sin for the rest of her life. Current event: fighting an undead horror. The monster taunts the team. Explosions are heard. The team is exhausted. Siglund asks Fail if she has any magic left. The witch's face shows signs of a hard fight. She replies that she can still use magic. The undead terror's attacks were too fast. She couldn't find the right moment to cast a powerful spell. Suddenly, a powerful blow hit Fail, knocking the last of her strength out of her. She was thrown back. Warrior Siglund looks after her in fear. Then he looks up and sees the face of a monster. Horror hit the warrior. He flies towards Fail. The monster was surprised that the adventurers were so fragile. In front of the undead horror stood two team members, the leader and the healer. They were shaking in fear, awaiting their fate. Himeno appeared behind her, shouting that she was caught. But with a quick movement of his hand, the undead horror deprived her of an arm and a leg. Himeno didn't even have time to come to her senses about what had just happened. It happened so quickly. The monster was pleased with herself while Loki screamed Himeno's name. He was in wild horror. He didn't understand what was happening. He looked at the defeated team. This shouldn't have happened. He couldn't believe his eyes. Kanata called out to him and brought him out of his trance. Something was approaching from ahead. Loki managed to put up a magical barrier, but the monster breaks through him, depriving him of his arms and legs. The healer is horrified by what she sees. Vidrador groans in pain. Kanata leans over to check on him. The leader screams in agony, asking what she's doing. She needs to heal him faster. The monster approaches him. The undead horror stood before the two of them, Loki frantically begging her to wait. He clarifies that she can speak. He loudly begs for mercy. Hysterically, Vidrador begs her once again, saying that he cannot die now. He asks her to spare him at least, and offers to do whatever he wants with his comrades. Kanasa was unpleasantly surprised by his words and recoiled a little. Himeno can't believe her ears. How could Loki say such a thing? The monster let out a chuckle. The undead horror states that Loki's screams disgust her. She can't do this anymore. Suddenly Loki grabs Kanata. He covers himself with it like a shield. The monster complains about the screams. Fail screams as she casts the Gigaflame spell. The monster turns towards her in surprise. A huge puff of fire and smoke is seen. The healer didn't expect this. Fail decided to fight back with all her might. She shouts at Kanata that she will distract the undead horror for now, so that she can use this chance to heal the others. Loki looked at her with his last breath and hung his head. The monster had a satisfied smile on her face. She was moving towards the witch, saying that she felt that her scream would be much more pleasant to her. The black magician wanted to give Kanata a chance to escape. Horror attacks. Fail considered it her punishment. Punishment for betraying her friend back then. She wondered what Ray would think if he saw them like this, if he would be happy to see traitors die. She hoped so. The monster's tentacles dug into Fail's body, and she dropped her staff. She remembers how that day, she was afraid of death more than anything in the world. That day, she could not stop herself and left Ray. People like her, witches with demon blood, are hated by many. She believes that everyone will turn away from the witch without hesitation. She could not say anything and was afraid that she would be abandoned too. Her fear of death was stronger than her desire to save him. She thought that she had become selfish because of her fear of dying. Therefore, she considered what was happening to be her punishment and voluntarily went along with it. Fail's name screaming, and she was thinking about Ray. Loki Yggdrasil came to his senses. He wondered where he was. He was in the asylum. Then he remembered. I remembered fighting the horror of the undead. He screamed when he realized that his right arm and left leg were gone. A girl came to him, noticing that he was awake. Yggdrasil asks who is standing in front of him. The girl introduces herself as the head of this hospital. She assumed from Loki's reaction that the pain-relieving spell had worked. Loki, hearing who she wanted to ask for something, Yggdrasil begged her to heal his arm and leg. He was sure she could do it, offered to pay any amount of money. Again, he said that he couldn't just end it like that. The girl replied that she couldn't cure him, but she knew someone who could. Hearing this, the young man was delighted. He clarified whether this was true, no longer impatient to know the name. She talks about Ray, adding that he is the one he got rid of. Loki is terribly shocked. He cannot and does not want to believe it. He asks again if only Ray can do this. He also clarifies that he did nothing to him. The girl is silent, and Yggdrasil starts shouting. He declares that he is the leader of the Gunkino-Dongwa team, and the Emperor himself has recognized her. And killing comrades is a serious crime. The manager says 5 have passed away in the last 5 years. Loki looked hopeless. The girl continued to say that there were no more white mages in his team. She found it strange, because white mages are the role with the least risks, and there were 5 incidents in his team. She admits that everything became clear thanks to Kanata's report, which said that Loki used her as a shield when he was on the verge of death. The young man tried to justify himself, but the girl continued to talk about how he had sold the rest of his comrades to the monster. She was ready to confess to him. Loki looked scared. The manager did not hold back her emotions. She shouted at him. She was furious after she heard that he was to blame for everything. She told him not to think that he would get away with it so easily. The leader listens to her with intent. The girl laughs because whatever it is, as an adventurer, he has a cross on him. Loki doesn't understand and frantically asks what she means. She was talking about his comrades. The manager asks if he is interested in what happened to them. Sugwin Stay is in a coma. Hameno is blind. Her left limbs are amputated. And Fail is missing, presumed dead. As she spoke, Loki's face twisted in horror. The manager starts talking about his adventure team Gunkino-Dongwa, which he bragged about so much. She says she's gone. Loki is broken. He's shocked by what he heard, not understanding what is happening. There is noise in the forest. Blows are heard. Liquid monster fights white mage Ray. The magician holds a sword in his hand. He cuts off the tentacles of the monster. The monster talks to him, offers to play and have fun. Ray doesn't answer him. He's deep in thought. The monster gurgles and its limbs instantly grow together. The guy was talking about how no matter how many times he cuts it, it immediately recovers. And it seems like it never runs out of magical energy. He wondered how many people and monsters she had managed to absorb. Ray fights off the attacks, still thinking. He couldn't understand why a monster of that level was here now. The guy almost got hit by a tentacle, but he managed to dodge it. He said that this undead horror is often called a reader of the dead. Ray jumped back further and continued to reason. It was a monster of the highest rank, which usually lives somewhere near the castle of the demon lord. And that meeting it here is simply unthinkable. Impossible. Ray realized that last time it had intentionally released a huge amount of magical energy to attract his attention, apparently specifically trying to lure him in. It finally dawned on the magician that this was most likely a test. This meant that someone was using this monster to test Ray. If the white mage was right, there was only one conclusion, that there was someone behind this who could control the undead terror. It must be a high-ranking demon or something on that level. Ray looked around. He was sure that he was most likely being watched right now. The monster attacked the guy, but he dodged it by doing a somersault. He landed and thought that it was a bad idea to prolong the fight. He wouldn't be able to track the observer. Adding to his argument was the fact that Liana was waiting for him. The liquid monster roars, and Ray thinks that his enemy is a monster of level S, and most likely even S+. He does not want to reveal all his abilities, but he needs to finish him off quickly. A deadly figure forms around Ray. He decides to go all out. With a sharp jerk, Ray flew towards the monster. He skillfully dodges all attacks, cutting through the limbs of the undead horror. Ray reaches the center of the monster. He finds its core, the weak point of the undead horror. The magician pulls it out and the monster is greatly weakened. He found it. Ray quickly forms a beam of aura spear and decides that with this blow, he will finish off the monster. His face expresses complete confidence in his actions. The liquid monster screams fiercely. The white mage rushes towards it. He delivers a powerful blow. The monster is defeated, and then instantly steps back. Ray looks at what is in his hand and concludes that this is the core of Death Terror. He can use it to create a weapon or sell it for a good amount, but he definitely needs to take it with him. He heard something and looked back. To his surprise, he saw Liana in the bushes. She breathed a sigh of relief and told him that he had defeated the horror of the undead in an instant. Ray exclaimed the girl's name and she called him incredible. The girl looks at the magician as if spellbound and tells him with admiration that she saw how he was able to destroy the core with one blow and also dodged the fast tentacles. Ray was a little embarrassed and scratched the back of his head, admitting that he had fought such monsters several times already. The guy remembered that horrors appeared on the middle floors of the Yggdrasil Labyrinth. Although they were strong, of course, but on the lower floors the monsters were even more terrible. Ray tells the girls that since things are quiet now, they need to finish up and they'll head out early in the morning. Liana agrees. They head to their camp, but the guy notices something off to the side. He stopped and looked around silently. The girl called out to him when he fell behind. Ray ran to her, apologizing for the delay. He turns his attention to the core and he remembers something. Ray called Liana. She came up and asked what was going on. The white mage asked when they got to the capital if the girl wanted to go eat something sweet. Liana asks again about sweets. Ray wonders if she doesn't like sweets. The girl admits that she does. Then he tells her that they will sell the core and have a sweet holiday. He loves desserts and knows a great place. Finally, he asks how she likes this idea. The girl was a little embarrassed and thought about desserts. Still, she answered that if he didn't mind, she would be happy to eat. Ray was delighted and concluded that everything was decided. Now he was looking forward to it. The girl awkwardly agreed. The white magician looks at the sky and says that the sun has already set. He suggests stopping here. Liana calls out his name. He turns to face her and asks what is going on. Maybe she noticed a monster. But the girl screams the word village. She excitedly says that she has found a village. They came to a large wall. They both look up. Liana asks, "This is a village?" Ray replies, "Yes, without a doubt, this is a village." The girl fell to the ground and said intermittently that she was very happy. The magician was worried about her and asked if everything was okay. Liana looked at him with a smile on her face and answered that everything was fine. She was just a little tired. Ray smiled back at her. He gives her his hand to help her up and thinks that her tiredness is not surprising. After all, they have been walking since early morning, managed to get lost, and ended up spending a lot of time looking for the way. The heroes look at the wall again. Liana says that it is an impressive fortress. Ray suggests that these walls must be made of stone filled with divine power to protect the inhabitants. After all, in the past, monsters often attacked villages, and there were many victims. Therefore, each settlement began to build fortifications like these. Ray suggests finding the gate. The girl agrees. They go. They stopped, and the magician assumed that it was them and that it seemed to be the only entrance. Liana steps forward and tells Ray that she will go there and try to ask if they will open the gate for them. The guy suddenly grabs her hand and asks her to wait. Liana doesn't understand what's going on. Ray looks at the wall and starts to explain. He says that this gate, like the walls, is made of divine power. It repels those with magical powers such as monsters and demons. He puts his hand forward and an explosion occurs. Ray's hand is burned. He finishes his thought by saying that the gates reject people too. He uses healing. Liana tensed up. She apologized. She admitted that she knew they kept out monsters and demons, but she didn't think it would work on humans. Ray told her that the gates were mainly created to block monsters and demons, so it was okay. He assured her that she didn't have to know that. Besides, he assumed that this was her first time seeing a divine gate. An unfamiliar knight stood before Ray, ready to attack the boy. He tensed, holding his sword at the ready, and carefully watched Ray's every move. The boy felt threatened and froze, not knowing what to do next. The knight holds the long end of the sword tightly in both hands, his face hidden in shadow, and the man has a deft grip on the hilt, ready for action. Liana calls out to Ray softly, trying to get his attention in the tense silence. The stranger turned attentively to the girl and the boy, asking them a direct question to clarify whether they were people or whether there was something else in them. The boys stand in front of the knight with surprised and puzzled expressions on their faces, not understanding what is happening around them and what exactly this whole situation is. It turns out that the stranger felt a powerful magical reaction emanating from the guys and suspected that they were not ordinary people at all, but demons skillfully disguised as travelers. The holy knight is named Atra, and his rank is Diamond, symbolizing the highest degree of strength and devotion. He tirelessly serves as the guardian of the divine tree that stands majestically at the gates of the village. Ray noticed with obvious surprise that the guardian of the tree, the knight Atra, was of a respectable age, which did not quite correspond to his initial expectations and ideas about guardians of such rank. The knight dismissed the man's comment, explaining that he was simply lucky. Atra added that he was in fact still very inexperienced and had much to learn to truly live up to his rank and title as a guardian. Ray looked at the knight carefully and intently, his gaze expressing slight doubt, and he asked with obvious interest whether he was really as lucky as he claimed. Only those who truly possess divine power are capable of activating such a powerful gate. Judging by how smoothly they moved earlier, it is safe to say that Atra is far from a simple person. The knight was truly strong. He honestly asked the guys for forgiveness for the misunderstanding that had occurred, thus trying to defuse the situation and restore trust. If the restaurants hadn't been closed, Atra would have surely treated the people to a delicious meal as an apology, but he could only offer water. The knight decided to recommend a good hotel with a discount offer. Liana smiled and thanked the knight. The boy introduced himself to his new acquaintance as Ray and said that the girl's name was Liana. The man apologized for the late visit and noted that the knight had helped them out by letting them into the village. The knight was very surprised when he learned that the boy and girl were really in the forest, because it was very dangerous there. He admitted that they were lucky to stay alive after such a risky walk. Atra immediately noticed. Seeing this reaction, he felt slightly embarrassed and almost immediately lost the desire to continue the conversation in the same casual tone. Suddenly, the knight decided to reveal to the boy some important truth, which he had carefully kept to himself until then. It turns out that at this very moment, the village is faced with a serious problem that significantly complicates the lives of all its inhabitants and has a noticeable impact on their daily existence. Atra came closer, looking closely at his interlocutors, and Ray, not hiding his surprise, asked again, clarifying the details regarding the problem that had arisen. For months now, this village has been haunted by an evil demon, sowing fear and destruction among its inhabitants. The boy asked the knight again, trying to understand all the details and the seriousness of the current problem. The boy curiously asked Atra if he had ever heard of such a creature as a werewolf. In response, the knight continued his thought, explaining that a werewolf is a demon, which is popularly called a wolfman. For several months now, the residents of this village have been the target of a merciless demon who relentlessly brings terror and fear into their daily lives. The boy noticed that they had not met a single werewolf on the road with Liana. Atra said that if they had met a demon, they would not have reached the village. Then Ray asked how strong this werewolf was. The werewolf's rank is C, making it a dangerous opponent. If the country knew that the village was being threatened by this werewolf, they would have likely sent a squad of holy knights to eliminate it long ago. Ray noted that those sent to help were probably defeated. Atra, in turn, noted that the boy was quick-witted. Indeed, 4 diamond-ranked knights were sent to the village. However, despite their high level of training and rich experience, all of these knights were mercilessly and unexpectedly killed by the werewolf, which only increased the fear and despair among the villagers. Ray asked in surprise if all the knights had really died in the encounter with the werewolves. Atra explained that there were 3 werewolves, which complicated the situation considerably and explained the tragic outcome. That is why this village is now completely isolated from the outside world. The inhabitants can neither leave its borders nor ask for help. Food supplies are almost exhausted. The situation is becoming more critical. The 4 knights never returned from their mission, so Atra continued to hope that reinforcements would arrive soon. However, with each passing day, His confidence that the villagers would survive until then was fading. Liana looked at the boy with fear and caution, feeling anxious, and immediately called Ray. At this most tense moment, the knight suddenly said that this was not all that they had to find out. Aether noted that in addition to the werewolves, there was another serious problem that was no less dangerous. Something incredible was happening in this village, which made the already difficult situation even worse. The knight continued his story, explaining that people in this settlement began to disappear one after another without a trace, which caused real fear and anxiety among the residents. The guys were very scared by this news. This also started when the werewolf appeared. At first, Atra thought it was the work of humans, but there were no traces of them, not even screams, so the headman and the others decided that the disappearances were not related to werewolves. The boy asked the knight carefully whether he shared the village elder's view of the events that were taking place. Atra replied that he did not agree with his opinion and saw the situation differently than the elder described it. The knight is sure that a secret spy is hiding in the village itself, who not only regularly passes on important and valuable information to the werewolves, but also, most likely, actively participates in organizing the kidnapping of local residents. In the village, there is a high wall on which a sword is painted brightly and prominently. In this area, the white-haired man apparently gained the upper hand over Vegan, demonstrating his strength and skill in a decisive confrontation. One of the legendary and so-called 4 deadly demons is named Alfurk Sama, a powerful, ancient, and truly sinister creature. This story is not yet finished and continues, unfolding new secrets and challenges for the heroes that are yet to be revealed. The girl with short hair, decorated with 2 small ponytails, is named Liz, and the dark-haired boy is named Shu. The children carefully brought the knight's dinner, carefully carrying the dish on their palms so as not to damage its contents. Aether warmly thanked the children for their help and attention, sincerely appreciating their efforts and care. Shu smiled and chuckled softly, not hiding his joy in the light amusement that filled his face with warmth. Liz stood next to him with a surprised and curious look. Ray asked the knight if these children were his own. Aether calmly replied that these babies did not belong to him and were not directly related to him. These were the children of the owner of the local hotel, who, noticing Ray and Liana, approached them with friendly smiles on their faces and introduced themselves, saying their names with genuine joy. The little girl carefully approached the people, looking them over carefully and with genuine curiosity asked their names, hoping to get to know them better and start a friendly conversation. The boys smiled and introduced themselves one by one. The children and adults warmly exchanged friendly handshakes, showing mutual respect, trust, and readiness to get to know each other further. Liz and Liana were genuinely happy about this meeting. The knight explained that due to his duty and the importance of standing guard, he could not leave his post, so the children regularly brought him food, thereby helping to maintain his strength and perform his duty without distractions. Ray quickly understood the situation and warmly praised the kids for their care and efforts, noting that it was thanks to their help that Atra was always provided with food and the necessary support. The children were very pleased to hear kind words and sincere praise addressed to them, which brought bright smiles to their faces and noticeably lifted their spirits, filling their hearts with joy and a sense of significance. Suddenly, the knight asked Shu and Liz to take Ray and Liana to the local hotel. There had been no guests there for a long time, and he was sure that the children's mother would be very happy to see new guests. Liz and Shu asked incredulously whether their mother would really be happy to have guests. Aether calmly and confidently confirmed that he was absolutely convinced and sure of this, because it would be a real joy for her. The little ones took on the role of guides and led the guests to the local hotel. Liana and Ray could not hide their surprise, noticing how friendly their little companions were. People smiled sweetly, enjoying the moment. Suddenly, the knight unexpectedly reminded Ray that he could recommend a great inn, which was run by Liz and Shu's mother, adding that it was always hospitable and cozy. Aether noted that the hotel was inexpensive and had a large bathroom, making it particularly convenient. The boys had no reason to refuse such an offer, and Ray was looking forward to the night's stay at the hotel. The hotel territory is large and beautiful, well kept and spacious. Various plants grow on its territory, which give the place coziness and picturesqueness, creating a pleasant atmosphere for guests. Night had already fallen, and a bright moon was softly shining near the hotel house, illuminating the surroundings with its calm and silvery light which penetrated through the branches of the trees and created a special atmosphere of comfort. The children happily informed their mother that they had guests, and the woman immediately began to bustle about, quickly starting to cook and put everything in order to welcome the new visitors as best as possible. The breathless and slightly agitated girl introduced herself as the owner of the inn named Shinoka, and with a friendly smile invited the guests to follow her inside, promising comfortable accommodation and a caring welcome. The children laughed when they noticed that their mother was out of breath. Ray politely apologized for showing up with Liana without warning, but the innkeeper smiled and said that everything was fine. There had been few guests lately, so Shinoka thanked the boys for staying with them. She was also surprised that they had managed to get to the village at all, since there were demons roaming outside of it. The boy asked with interest whether she was talking specifically about werewolves, which often frighten the inhabitants of these places. Then he added that he and Liana were lucky because they did not have to encounter dangerous creatures along the way. The innkeeper was even more surprised and said that some men from the village tried to go to distant lands for help, hoping to find salvation, but unfortunately, almost all of them were immediately killed. Werewolves are apparently a type of demon with a very keen sense of smell, making them particularly dangerous. The girl emphasized that the boys were incredibly lucky to have managed to avoid this threat. Ray thought deeply about how lucky he really was that together with Liana, they managed to overcome difficulties and dangers, avoiding encounters with demons and werewolves and surviving despite all the trials. Apparently, the village was indeed surrounded by a pack of werewolves, and if their sense of smell was really that keen, they must have already sensed Ray and Liana's presence, which added to the feeling of anxiety. The boy thought that he had a keen sense of smell, but he did not sense a single demon on the way to the village. The hostess apologized for keeping him, because the guests might be tired. The girl decided to show the boys to the room. The guests were given a room on the second floor of the hotel, where it was cozy and quiet. Suddenly, when they were already approaching the steps of the stairs, the boy unexpectedly called the girl by name, drawing her attention to something. Ray wanted to gather more information to better understand the situation, so he decided to ask the innkeeper to tell him about the events and casualties that had occurred in the village recently. It was a quiet morning and the boys were already awake and out of bed in their cozy hotel room, ready to start a new day. Liana decided to summarize and comprehend everything that Shinoka-san told them in order to better understand what was happening and build a plan for further action. Werewolves began appearing near the village about 3 months ago, harassing the villagers. The first victim was a young woman who went hunting outside the village and never returned. The severed head of the missing girl was found at the village's divine gate, and from its condition, the villagers came to the eerie conclusion that the rest of the body had been completely eaten by an unknown predator or creature. After this, the men of the village united into a squad to fight the terrible monsters that threatened their lands. They bravely went into battle, but unfortunately, they all died. A few days later, as Atra-san mentioned, 3 holy knights were sent to exterminate the werewolves, but they too were exterminated. Then another group of men went to get help and were also exterminated. Ray noted that the whole incident seemed like one of those mysterious disappearances that happened from time to time in those parts and left residents in a state of anxiety and confusion. Liana confirmed the boy's thought and added that all these events actually began back then. People began to disappear without a trace or explanation. A total of 28 people disappeared, and what was especially alarming was that they were all men, which caused even more anxiety and fear among the villagers. The girl found it hard to believe because this village was protected by a divine gate. There was no evidence that werewolves had managed to penetrate the village, but people continued to disappear. Due to unexplained disappearances and no evidence of intrusion, Atra-san came to the conclusion that there was a spy operating in the village who was assisting outside forces. The disappearances began immediately after the werewolves appeared in the village, and it is hard to believe that this is just a coincidence considering that it was with their appearance that a series of mysterious incidents began. Liana asked Ray if he thought there might be a spy hiding among the villagers who was somehow facilitating the disappearances that were happening or even passing on important information to external enemies. The boy replied that perhaps this was not an ordinary spy in the usual sense, but someone much more insidious and dangerous, a creature that skillfully disguises itself as a person and hides among the villagers. Shinoka entered the room with the announcement that dinner was ready, interrupting their serious conversation. The girl sheepishly apologized for disturbing the guys at such an important moment. The prepared dishes were neatly laid out on the table, looking very appetizing and giving off pleasant aromas, attracting all those gathered to join in the meal. The boys, still thoughtful and pondering what they had heard, slowly left the room, heading towards the table where dinner was already waiting. Ray remarked that he had heard about the food shortage in the village and was surprised by how generously the innkeeper had piled the plates. He cautiously asked if it was too much, considering the meager supplies in these parts. The girl admitted that there was indeed a shortage of food in the village. But the boys were the first guests in many months, which is why the hostess asked them not to be shy and to boldly treat themselves to the delicacies. Ray politely apologized and thanked the generous innkeeper from the bottom of his heart for her kindness and care. Liana joined in his words of gratitude. After that, Shinoka left the room, leaving the boys alone. Liana gently suggested that the boys start eating and relax after a long day, to which Ray gratefully agreed. However, something suddenly caught his attention. He was puzzled. The boy's face reflected confusion. Small children entered the room. Shu, realizing that he was interrupting an important moment, apologized guiltily. Liz noted that it smelled delicious in here, and to confirm her words, the little ones' stomachs immediately began to rumble from hunger. Ray, worried by their appearance, asked if the children had eaten dinner. They answered affirmatively, specifying that they had eaten a piece of bread each. The boy was surprised that Shu and Liz had eaten little for dinner. The kids noted that they were not allowed to eat much. Liana and Ray kindly and with genuine warmth invited the boy and girl to join them at the table to eat, share a meal, and spend time in a friendly and welcoming atmosphere. Ray kindly and without hesitation decided to give his entire portion of food to the children. Shu and Liz were sincerely delighted and grateful for such a generous act of the boy, which brought a warm smile to their faces. The boy said he wasn't hungry, but he wanted to ask the kids for something in return. He explained that the kids needed to fulfill a condition for tasty food, and Shu and Liz curiously asked what exactly they needed to do to eat. As it turned out during the conversation, Ray's true desire was for the kids to fairly and equally share the food offered to them, showing attention and respect to each other. In response to the friendly request, Liz and Shu smiled sincerely, were genuinely happy, and confidently assured that they would be able to fairly divide the food between themselves without any problems. Suddenly, the children's mother entered the room. She addressed her daughter and son sternly but calmly, insistently asking them not to disturb the guests and to behave quietly and respectfully. Shinoka asked her children with obvious surprise and slight concern why they were eating the guests' food. Ray, calm and confident, explained that everything was fine since he was the one who allowed them to eat. In this case, the innkeeper was ready to deduct from the guest's fee the amount for the cost of the food eaten to compensate for the loss. But the young man politely asked to leave the full price unchanged, showing respect. Shinoka asked Ray carefully and doubtfully if he was really sure about his decision to do exactly that. He replied that he was absolutely sure about his action, since this food was prepared specifically for him. The innkeeper apologized with a warm smile for any inconvenience and sincerely thanked the young man for his generosity and understanding, bowing deeply as a sign of respect and gratitude. Ray carefully noted that Atra-san, the guardian of the divine tree, is very close and trusting with the girl's children, maintaining warm and sincere relationships with them that demonstrate his care and attention to them. The innkeeper noted with a warm smile that her children often play with the knight and have become very attached to him, which makes her deeply grateful and sincerely appreciative of Atru for his care. Ray noted that perhaps the knight was also not indifferent and felt gratitude towards the innkeeper because her children regularly brought him food, thereby showing their warmth towards him. Shinoka agreed with the opinion expressed, noting that it was probably true, but at the same time, a desire to add something to express her own opinion, which was slightly different from what she heard, flashed in her eyes. The girl said that Atra-san used to have a family with whom he lived in another city, far from the current events, and that this part of his past still remained significant in his life, influencing his actions. However, all of the knight's relatives died tragically at the hands of bloodthirsty demons, leaving him alone. The only reminder of the loved ones who once made up his family was one old photograph. Shiana had heard that the guardian of the divine tree, Atra-san, once had children about the same age as Shu and Liz. Perhaps this was what explained his special affection and warm attitude towards them. Ray deeply and sincerely understood that Atra had lost everyone who had ever been truly dear and close to his heart. And it was this terrible event that explained his current depressed state and inner heaviness. In fact, he knew about the threat looming over his family, but still decided to stay and protect the village, since without his presence, the Divine Gate would become inactive, leaving the city defenseless against enemies. The villagers are truly grateful to the knight for his protection and dedication. Now the young man finally understands the true reason why Atra is so attached to the innkeeper's children. Even after losing his family, he continues to fight, carrying a heavy loss in his heart that is hard to imagine. Now he fulfills his duty to protect the village as the guardian of the divine tree. The hallway is softly lit, creating a warm and cozy atmosphere, and all the trash from the recently finished meal has already been carefully thrown away to maintain cleanliness and order in the room. Now Ray feels very tired after a long day and wants to take a warm, relaxing bath, and then go to bed peacefully to have a good rest and gain strength for new achievements. The young man wanted a separate room to have some privacy, which was especially important for him at this difficult moment. Ray angered Liana with his behavior because it suddenly turned out that the room was intended for 3 people. Now the boys had to share the limited space with the daughter of the owner. The young man answered Liana that for him sharing a room with another girl is a problem, since he is a guy and feels uncomfortable in such a situation, which makes it much more difficult for him to rest. Liana decided to sleep on the floor and give the girl the bed to avoid unnecessary inconvenience. At that moment, Ray remembered the bath and his gaze suddenly became frightened as if he realized something important. Liana was very angry. She stood there, frowning tensely, trying to barely contain the irritated expression on her face, which was becoming more and more noticeable with each passing moment. Her gaze was stern. Ray began to inquire carefully what was wrong with the girl. Perhaps she had a stomachache or didn't like the food. However, Liana calmly replied that the food was delicious and even thanked him for the treat. The young man was noticeably puzzled by the girl's unexpected behavior and could not understand the true reason for her unusual and uncharacteristic mood, which caused him to feel confused and anxious. It turned out that Ray had given his portion to the children, and the food that they were originally supposed to get actually belonged to Liana. Hearing this, the guy became even more puzzled, trying to understand why this happened. The young man anxiously asked if the girl was hungry because if she fainted, it could be a problem. In response, the girl assured him that she was fine because she had long been accustomed to eating dried meat. Ray felt ashamed of his actions, realizing that he had made a mistake that could have caused inconvenience to others. This made him feel uneasy. He stopped and began to think about his actions. The young man told Liana that she shouldn't apologize because he doesn't feel hungry that often, because he has such a special body. The girl, hearing this, asked the boy if it was really true. Ray confirmed his words, telling in detail that as a child he was a slave and was forced to get used to harsh living conditions and poor nutrition, which significantly affected the characteristics of his body. The young man was never properly fed as a child. He was rarely given enough food, which is why he was constantly hungry. Over time, he got used to such a hard and harsh way of life. One girl showed genuine kindness and compassion by saving an unfortunate and absolutely helpless boy. At that moment, she became a real support for him in the most difficult and dark times of his life. She, too, was in slavery, experiencing her own hardships and difficulties. But despite this, she always willingly shared her food with Ray. With concern, she repeated that the boy must eat a lot in order to grow. At the same time, she herself most likely very often remained hungry and experienced a lack of food, sacrificing her own nutrition and comfort in order to help Ray survive and grow stronger. Liana understood why the young man decided to give his food to the children. It was an act of caring. Ray, in turn, noted that now it was his turn to become kind and considerate, helping others, like that girl. The girl, with sincere and deep respect, emphasized that the guy really is a kind person, capable of sincerely caring for others and showing attention even in difficult life situations. Ray asked with uncertainty and slight doubt whether Liana was really talking about him. The girl calmly and confidently confirmed that she truly considered the young man a kind and decent person. The girl was sure that the children would never forget the kindness that Ray showed them. And that is why Liana sincerely admired the young man's actions, seeing in it real care and a sincere heart. The girl sincerely believes that the guy acted truly magnanimously, showing rare generosity and sincere concern for others. qualities that deserve deep respect and admiration. The boy thought about how Liana had a tendency to worry a lot about what other people thought of her, and how this sometimes seriously prevented her from being herself and showing her true individuality. This girl always watches those around her, listens to every word, but almost never speaks directly, constantly fearing the consequences of her statements and condemnation from others. When she speaks, she usually tries to speak well of others, showing kindness. Although this does not mean that she always behaves this way, for such a young girl it is still quite an unusual quality. Rei realizes that all of these behavioral characteristics are due to the fact that she grew up in slavery, where she had to be constantly alert and careful in order to survive. This is just a young man's guess, but it seems that the girl was trained from childhood to become an elite slave, which meant special strictness and cruel tests. She must have had to go through a lot. She hides a deep emotional wound behind a carefully constructed defense mechanism in order to prevent herself from suffering even more and to maintain at least some internal support in difficult situations. Just like Rei himself once did. He also hid his emotional wound, trying in vain to protect himself from internal pain and not allow his difficult past to completely destroy him from the inside. Now she is no longer restricted or controlled, but perhaps she still bears the mark of having once been a slave. But she is still only a 12-year-old girl. She must live freely, without any barriers or restrictions. Rei sincerely wants to remove these chains from her that prevent her from opening up and being herself, allowing her to feel real freedom and ease in life. The young man decided to speak to Liana, addressing her with the hope of a response. She heard him and immediately responded, showing attention. Rei noted that he and Liana have an official contract that regulates their relationship. However, he emphasized that he does not consider himself her master and does not intend to limit her freedom. The girl looked at the young man in surprise, her eyes expressing confusion and incomprehension. It was obvious that she did not fully grasp the meaning of his words and did not understand what exactly the essence of what he was trying to say was. The boy calmly noted that Liana should not be so afraid and worried. As a sign of support and consolation, Rei gently stroked the girl's head, trying to encourage her and instill a sense of calm. The young man sincerely wishes that one day the 12-year-old girl will be able to find her own way in life, not as a slave, but as a free person. Liana listened carefully to his words and agreed with Rei. At least, as long as the young man is close to Liana and supports her, he will always be ready to protect her from any dangers and difficulties, standing guard over her safety and peace. Rei, who had been waiting for this moment with impatience and excitement for a long time, can finally enjoy the long-awaited swim in the pool, immersing himself in the pleasant water and forgetting about all his worries for a while. It would probably be full of people and have a lively atmosphere if it weren't for the recent disturbing story with werewolves, which has left all the residents very scared and worried. Suddenly, the young man noticed someone's leg peeking out from around the corner, and at that very moment, someone unexpectedly apologized, breaking the silence. It turned out that Liana also decided to join in and went swimming. Rei asked the girl curiously why she decided to come at that particular moment. The young man carefully asked if Liana wanted to go into the pool first, but she decided to wait a little and go swimming a little later. The girl approached Rei, looked him in the eye, and sincerely apologized for her previous behavior, realizing that she had caused him trouble and upset him with her actions. At first, Liana did not immediately understand what exactly was happening and what the essence of this whole difficult situation was. But after some thought, she decided to support the young man, show sympathy to him, and help him swim. Rei calmly and confidently said that there was no need for this at all, since he did not consider himself a master for Liana and did not expect any additional efforts or special attention from her. The girl answered honestly that she was very anxious and worried because the young man was doing so many good and meaningful things for her, but she could not respond to him with the same sincere care and full support. Because of all this, Liana humbly and with genuine emotion asked Rei to allow her to do at least the little that was in her power to help him a little and express her gratitude. The young man deeply understood and felt the girl's sincere emotions, feeling all the warmth of her words and the sincerity of her intentions. Rei used to be like that too. He was afraid of being useless, and so he tried his best to do everything he could to be useful to others. It was important to him to dispel Liana's worries and help her feel more confident. The boy decided that it would be right and reasonable to accept the girl's help, which she sincerely and kindly offered him. Rei allowed Liana to help him and wash his back without objection. The girl was very happy about what happened, and a sincere, bright smile immediately shone on her face, reflecting the joy and relief that she felt. First, Liana asked Ray if he really confirmed his words and was ready to accept her help. He confidently answered that he did. Then the girl approached the guy and noted with a smile that she could always be relied on. Liana emphasized that in such a situation there is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, and there is no need to feel embarrassed, because it is all natural. In response to her words, Ray said that he himself is quite capable of washing off the dirt without help. The girl called the young man to her, and he first decided to take a towel with him. Liana asked Ray carefully and with care if he was experiencing any discomfort. He calmly assured her that he did not feel any pain. Hearing these words, the girl was sincerely happy. Liana was happy, smiling, and feeling useful. However, Ray didn't like all this, because he thought that the girl was behaving too submissively, as if she were a slave, and this made him uneasy. Suddenly, the girl unexpectedly asked Ray-sama if he could really defeat the dangerous and insidious werewolves, because for her it seemed an incredibly difficult and almost impossible task. The young man replied that defeating the werewolves should be easier than dealing with the dreaded undead they had encountered yesterday. However, he added that it would be more difficult if they had to fight 3 opponents at once. Werewolves are fast demons. They surpass even the undead themselves in speed, even vegan. If one of them escapes, he will bring others, and this is really dangerous. Liana understands everything, but something else worries her. The girl anxiously recalled the incident of mysterious disappearances that had recently occurred in the village, causing her many concerns. Ray also remembered this event very well, realizing its seriousness. First of all, it is worth noting that werewolves live exclusively in the demonic world, which is located far beyond human territory, where their presence is practically not felt. Besides the dungeons in the demon world where the demons and the demon lord himself live, there are huge magical barriers surrounding them. They should not be able to enter our human world. Ray continued to patiently and thoroughly explain to Liana all the important details and nuances, trying to convey to her as clearly and completely as possible all the necessary information so that she could better understand the situation. The demons managed to sneak into the village undetected, bypassing or not passing through the carefully installed protective barriers that were supposed to prevent such an intrusion and ensure safety. Ray was very surprised and puzzled by the fact that demons were able to enter the village without passing through the protective barriers that were set up to stop such infiltration. Liana apologized to the boy with regret, realizing that the situation could have caused him unpleasant emotions. He replied that nothing terrible had happened, but deep inside, he still felt a strong anxiety. There are 2 types of demons that exist in human territory. The first are those who are born in this world, and the second are those who came from the dungeons. Werewolves are demons who came here through the dungeons. Ray suddenly remembered that in their world there was an ancient dungeon that served as a hidden passage and connected the demonic world with the human world. Liana confirmed his words, assuring him that this was indeed the case. 3 years ago, an SS-ranked teen found an entrance to a demonic world, from which they returned with evidence. People learned that the path existed, but the government did not reveal which dungeon the path was found in. So such a dungeon really does exist. Ray realized that most likely it was that terrible horror of the undead that used this secret and hidden passage to freely enter the world of people. In this case, there is a serious possibility that other, much more dangerous and powerful monsters have already penetrated through this dungeon, posing a serious threat to the safety of the human world. Ray sincerely and with deep respect thanked Liana for the valuable information she provided, emphasizing that her help was truly very important and useful for him. The girl's face suddenly changed. It became both surprised and mysterious, as if some important idea had arisen in her thoughts or she had suddenly realized something significant. Liana really did want to help Ray wash himself completely and clean himself thoroughly to make this task much easier for him. But he refused, explaining that he could handle it on his own. A little later, a man of respectable age with a friendly expression on his face approached the travelers and politely apologized for his late visit, explaining that he did not want to disturb anyone. This unknown man soon introduced himself as the village chief named Oki Yusei, commanding respect with his serious appearance. The headman sincerely and with deep respect apologized to the travelers for distracting them from their rest with his sudden appearance, explaining that his requests were truly important and could not wait. The boys calmed Oki down, telling him not to worry and offering to help him solve the problems that had arisen. They also asked if the village elder's visit was connected to the recent appearances of werewolves in the area. That's exactly how it was, because recently a small village has been constantly terrorized by dangerous werewolves who continuously pose a serious threat to the lives and safety of its inhabitants, giving no one any peace. All the knights who were sent to protect the village died in battles with werewolves. Food supplies are rapidly running out, and the villagers live in constant need. Moreover, they cannot even escape. The fort and a divine gate have successfully held back the demons, keeping them from attacking the village. However, if the situation continues to deteriorate, the village will soon be doomed to destruction. The elder, with a serious look, insistently asked the travelers when leaving the village to be sure to tell someone about the difficult situation and, if possible, to notify the knights of the capital so that they would come to the rescue. If the travelers really intend to leave the village, it is extremely important for them to remember to fulfill Okiyos's request and be sure to pass on the information they have about the current situation. The traveler replied that he was fully aware and understood all the concerns and requests of the elder, and would certainly take them into account when planning his further actions and decisions. The boys were still planning to go to the imperial capital, and Ray promised to personally tell the headman of Oka about the situation and convey a request for help so that reinforcements could be sent from the capital and the residents could be saved. The headman thanked the boy with deep respect for the promise he had given, especially emphasizing that it was he, with his determination, who became the last hope of the entire village and all its inhabitants in a difficult situation. Suddenly, the man unexpectedly noted that, in addition to what had already been said, it was extremely necessary to do something else very important and substantial in order to radically improve the current state of affairs and resolve the situation. The headman did not want to rush the boys and create a rush, trying to give them time to think about the situation and prepare. But recently, he received an extremely urgent and important message that requires immediate attention. This message came from the keeper of the sacred tree, Aitra, which immediately aroused Ray's genuine interest and concern, so he asked the headman again to clarify all the important details. The boys decided to check whether the notification they had received had really come from Aitra-san, the revered keeper. The elder confirmed their assumptions, once again assuring them that the message had been sent to him. Aitra said that if the boys were going to leave the village, it would be best to do so tonight. It seemed that the keeper did not sense the presence of werewolves, so leaving at night would be much safer. Some of the villagers disappeared without a trace at night, as if dissolving into the darkness, which caused the others to become increasingly anxious and develop an overwhelming fear of the unknown. Ray revealed that he had previously heard about the mysterious disappearance incidents from Atra-san and Shinoki-san himself, which further confirmed the seriousness and danger of the events taking place in the village. Shinoki responded to the situation with understanding, and the village chief noted that for some unknown reason, only men were disappearing, which caused additional concern among the villagers. A rhetorical question was raised, expressing bewilderment and alarm as to why it was men who were the victims of these mysterious disappearances, while other residents remained unharmed. The elder, whose voice trembled with excitement and deep concern, replied that he himself did not know the exact reason for these mysterious disappearances and, unfortunately, could not explain why exactly this was happening. Ray is also a man, and therefore staying in the village can be especially dangerous for him, despite the fact that the main threat is still the werewolves, who threaten everyone without exception. Liana turned to Ray-sam with a question about what they could do in this difficult situation, but the young man himself was still not sure how exactly he could help and what to do first. 3 dangerous werewolves had appeared in the village, and along with the mysterious disappearances of people, this was causing serious concern. In addition, some strange hands were seen nearby, adding even more threats. Ray apologized to Liana, realizing that she was tired and that it was necessary to leave immediately. However, the girl easily agreed and replied that she would follow Ray-sam, ready to support him in this situation. At the same time, the innkeeper cast a strange, wary, and slightly tense glance at her children, as if instinctively sensing something was wrong or foreseeing an approaching threat. Liz, visibly upset and slightly worried, asked the boys hopefully if they were really going to leave now, trying to figure out if there was still a chance to stay and spend a little more time together. The mother very strictly and persistently reminded her children that they must remain inside the room and under no circumstances go outside in order to avoid possible danger and not be exposed to risks. Today, the children were looking forward to the moment when they could finally play and chat with Ray and Liana with great excitement and genuine pleasure, happily anticipating the pleasant communication with them. Ray apologized to the little ones with sincere and deep regret that they would have to wait and that he might not be able to give them as much attention in the near future as he would like. The young man promised the kids that he would definitely come back again, and next time they would definitely be able to play together and have fun. The kids would also be looking forward to meeting Liana with great pleasure. The girl also warmly promised to definitely drop by to see the children a little later to spend time with them, support them, and help them cope with the difficulties during this difficult period. The innkeeper strictly warned the headman not to ask anything more from the travelers and not to make any additional demands, fearing that unnecessary requests could scare away the guests. Ray decided to approach and ask Oki an important question on his own, without waiting for Oki to approach him first, thus showing initiative and a desire to sort out the situation as quickly as possible. The boys began to get ready and gradually set off on their journey, preparing for the upcoming journey. Suddenly, Atra-san unexpectedly and with sincere regret apologized for the fact that everything turned out so suddenly and unexpectedly for Ray and Liana, fully understanding that the current situation could greatly surprise and confuse them. The young man answered calmly and confidently that everything was fine with him and that he had no complaints or dissatisfaction, despite what had happened. Going outside the village at midnight was very dangerous because of the creatures roaming around. But if the guys missed this unique chance, they might never be able to leave this settlement again. The knight humbly and sincerely apologized to the boys for the inconvenience that had occurred, expressing the hope that they would show understanding and be able to forgive him in this difficult situation. Ray calmly said that there was no need to apologize, trying to calm Atra down, after which he clarified whether he really did not sense any presence of werewolves in the immediate area. The knight calmly and confidently confirmed that he really did not feel any presence of these demons nearby, and, it seemed, at the moment there was no need to fear their possible appearance in the area. When Atra learned that the travelers had not encountered werewolves on their way to the village, he decided to personally check the area with his aura. Apparently, for some unknown reason, the demons were currently absent. Ray listened carefully to all of the knight's explanations, carefully considering each word, and after a short pause, confirmed that he understood him completely. Now is the best and most suitable time to leave the village without delay and not to postpone leaving until later, as delay can lead to undesirable consequences. The guys sincerely thanked the knight, and Liana separately expressed her sincere gratitude for the warm hospitality and care that they felt throughout their stay. Atra modestly replied that he did not deserve gratitude, apologizing again for warning them at the very last moment and possibly causing a lot of inconvenience with the unexpectedness of the situation. If the boys leave now, they will need to leave werewolf territory in an hour. Even if the path remains dangerous, the knight hopes that Ray and Liana will reach the capital alive and unharmed. Atra reminded that it was extremely important to inform the knights in the capital about the current situation in the village as soon as possible. In response, Ray confirmed that he would not forget about this important matter under any circumstances. Finally, the boys, having gathered their courage, began to leave the deserted village, taking their first steps full of determination towards an unknown path. The knight, remaining at the gate, watched them go, waving his hand. There was someone unfamiliar standing on the top of the hill. He stamped his foot on the ground as if trying to attract attention. However, the boys were far enough away that they could not notice this stranger due to the distance. Werewolves suddenly emerged from the dark shadows, and now there were no obstacles or barriers in their path. Directly above their heads, a large moon shines brightly and ominously. The demons, with a satisfied and sinister expression on their faces, were ready to begin to torture and torment the peaceful inhabitants of the village with impatience and cruelty, experiencing joy and satisfaction from the upcoming suffering. At the same time, Ray was deep in thought and thinking about how Wigan could have lost to the young guy, trying to understand the reasons and circumstances that led to such an unexpected outcome. The werewolves noticed the young man but did not approach or disturb him, as they mistook him for an ordinary traveler. In addition, they had clear orders from Alfurk-sama not to attack without necessity. One of the werewolves stood motionless in place, looking around carefully, and quietly called someone, urging them to come closer to him. The werewolves also noticed Liana. One of the demons immediately wanted to attack her and Ray, while the other was most attracted to the girl because she had strong magical powers. Some demon decided to stop the others, explaining to them that if they delayed a little and did not rush into the attack, then there was a high probability that the knights would arrive at the scene. A group of knights has recently formed, patrolling the villages and towns of the county on their own initiative. Their appearance is only a matter of time. The werewolves want to intimidate and torment the villagers until the knights arrive. The demons no longer needed to abduct people under cover of night, as the process, in light of their changed priorities, proved to be incredibly tedious and time-consuming. One of the werewolves was ready to torture even the most defenseless children without the slightest hesitation, feeling absolutely no pity, compassion, or regret for his cruel actions. Another demon longs to be satiated to the full and, without leaving a trace, striving to eat his fill from the heart. The demons tortured the unfortunate inhabitants of the defenseless village with unimaginable cruelty and sophistication, cold-bloodedly sowing unbearable fear, unbearable pain and despair among peaceful people. The werewolves decided to throw themselves a loud and noisy party to celebrate their power over the territory. The villagers were in a state of deep and intense fear and shock, completely shaken and devastated, unable to recover from the horror, helplessness, and all-consuming fear they had experienced. Suddenly, one demon dared to touch someone who was truly very important to the villagers, which instantly caused them to feel deeply unsettled and a sense of impending danger that gripped each of them. It turned out that one of the werewolves decided to torture the guardian of the sacred tree, Sam, the symbol of protection and strength of the village. The residents, having learned about this, fell into the strongest fear and horror, fearing for the fate of the protector. The girls, overcome with panic, ran away from the demons as quickly as possible, trying their best to get away from them in all available ways, hiding in the darkness. One of the girls screamed loudly and desperately, trying to warn everyone around that they needed to run immediately and escape from the approaching werewolves. But one of the demons replied that it was too late. There is only one entrance and exit: Divine Gate. The werewolf stood right in front of the innkeeper, telling her with a threat in his voice that she has nowhere to run and no chance of salvation. According to one of the residents, now this is not the same village as it used to be. The place has hopelessly changed beyond recognition, having lost its former appearance, comfort, and long-awaited peace. The werewolf chuckled and said that this place had become a real trap, where people were locked in and had absolutely no way to leave or escape. The demon suddenly and swiftly attacked the innkeeper, catching her off guard at the most inopportune moment and not giving her a single chance to defend herself or resist, leaving her completely helpless. There was a strong cage next to the werewolf and the people. The demon snatched the sword from the girl with a sharp and swift jerk, forcibly tearing the weapon from her tightly clenched hands and thereby depriving her of any opportunity to defend herself or somehow resist the attacker. The werewolf made it clear to the innkeeper without a shadow of a doubt that it would be impossible to kill him with an ordinary sword, no matter how sharp and skillfully forged it was. The demon viciously and greedily decided to eat the innocent children of Shinoki, anticipating his cruel meal, and the girl herself stood in complete shock and indescribable horror. She was unable to understand how to stop this evil. The innkeeper, overcome with panic and despair, urgently shouted to the children to gather as quickly as possible and managed to run away, find shelter, and hide from the approaching mortal danger. Now the werewolf knows exactly where the children are, and this knowledge gives him confidence and determination in his intentions. At the same time, the demon, smiling evilly, decided to first eat the girl herself, and only then her children. Suddenly, someone attacked the werewolf, and the demon was in pain. He was completely immobilized. It turned out that it was Ray who came, who managed to save the children in time along with the owner of the hotel and stood up for them. The young man sincerely apologized to Shinoka-san for being late, but she was not angry with him because Ray managed to save her life at the most necessary moment. However, from her gaze it was noticeable that the werewolf was still nearby. Ray noted that ill-mannered and badly behaved dogs must be taught a lesson so that they no longer create problems and do not cause discomfort to people around them. A fierce and intense fight suddenly broke out between the young man and the ferocious werewolf, during which Ray clearly and decisively emphasized that he was not to be trifled with and that it was better not to test his patience. The fight was truly dangerous and intense. Every move could lead to serious consequences. At some point, the demon unexpectedly dodged the blow, which seemed very strange to the boy. The werewolf tried to cheat in battle, using an unexpected and cunning move to gain an advantage over his opponent. But as a result of such cunning, he paid with his wounded arm. Once again, a fierce and intense battle began between the young man and the demon, in which each of them was ready to fight to the last of their strength, showing incredible fortitude, determination, and courage for the sake of their goal. Ray calculated his strike very clearly and precisely, carefully thinking through each of its elements, which allowed him to successfully knock the werewolf to the ground and gain the upper hand in this tense and difficult fight. The young man stands among the ruins of a destroyed hotel, surrounded by debris. His gaze becomes thoughtful and a little sad, as if he is trying to comprehend the full depth and gravity of the events that have taken place. Ray carefully examines the environment in which he fought with the demon. The table was broken, and the glass around was broken. Traces of a violent struggle were visible everywhere. Suddenly, the werewolf, overcome by shock, began to run, unable to understand who this boy was. The youth did not look like a holy knight at all. He did not use any divine power in the fights. The demon couldn't figure out who this mysterious unknown boy was, because the speed of his blow was simply inhuman. The werewolf didn't even have time to figure anything out before he was defeated. Ray thought to himself that the demon would kill him without a doubt or the slightest hesitation if he decided to continue the fight, because the enemy was too strong, relentless, and experienced. The demon needed to run as fast as possible, otherwise he risked dying right here. He understood that he urgently needed to report to the captain at the gate about the mysterious boy who had shown incredible strength. The werewolf barely made it to his boss, exhausted and wounded, breathing with difficulty and trying with all his might to convey very important and urgent news that could radically affect the course of further events. The demon found it difficult to speak. Pain and fatigue affected every word he spoke, making the conversation choppy and difficult. The captain suddenly heard a strange and incomprehensible sound, which immediately attracted his attention. The main werewolf was very surprised by this event and looked around with caution. Suddenly, an unfamiliar image appeared before the captain, as if it had come out of nowhere, causing him to freeze in surprise and tense anticipation of further events. The captain couldn't understand what exactly was going on. Ray held the exhausted werewolf tightly in his arms. The main demon couldn't believe that this was possible. It contradicted his ideas. The werewolf was sure that everything should have gone differently, and he blamed the guy who, in his opinion, set them up. Ray knew he couldn't let the lead werewolf escape or their whole endeavor would be ruined, so he had to turn his attention to the demon, attack him, and see it through to the end at any cost. Everything did not go according to the werewolf commander's plan. His carefully constructed strategy failed and events began to develop completely differently than he expected. It was night when Ray, without wasting any time, quickly wrapped the demon commander with a heavy chain, trying to deprive him of his freedom and control over the situation. There were no casualties thanks to Liana, who promptly organized assistance for children and other residents, helping them evacuate to a safe place. However, Ray had another plan that no one knew about. The villagers, not understanding his intentions, remained deeply confused and worried. It is imperative to expose the traitor hiding inside the village to prevent further danger. Fortunately, the people are all right thanks to the help of the wanderer Sam. Ray deliberately did not kill the werewolves in order to keep them alive and obtain important testimony from them that could shed light on what was happening and help in the investigation. Ray was asked why he decided not to kill the demons, because it could have greatly simplified the situation and avoided unnecessary problems. It was not necessary to leave the werewolves alive, because even without their testimony, it was clear which of them was the traitor and who was behind what happened. The same thing happened during the battle with Vegan. He could have easily been killed, but the young man deliberately left him alive, perhaps counting on some benefit or further development of events. Half measures, although they may seem like a convenient solution at the moment, can one day turn into deep regret and lead to unforeseen consequences. After all, the shadow again. Someone suddenly called the wanderer Sam. The village chief came out. Ray asked him if Oki was hurt after the incident. The chief replied that he was fine and had not been seriously injured. The village chief asked how the young man knew about the werewolf attack on the village at night. Ray began to tell Oki how he learned about this dangerous event, explaining all the details and circumstances. The young man told the elder that he could personally ask the guardian of the divine tree, who was now pretending to be dead, to hide his presence and observe what was happening secretly. The villagers were deeply surprised and shocked by what they heard, not expecting that the guardian of the divine tree was capable of such cunning and secrecy. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, but the traitor turned out to be Atra San, a man no one could have imagined betraying their trust. Everyone was deeply surprised and shocked by this unexpected news. It was hard to believe that the one everyone considered a kind-hearted and loyal guardian of the divine tree, in fact, turned out to be a traitor who betrayed everything he was dedicated to. Shinoka-san came up. She couldn't believe that Atra was in league with the werewolves. The girl firmly believed that he always stood by the village and protected it from any trouble. The elder attracted the attention of the assembled villagers by asking them to listen carefully to his important words. While the wanderer was about to leave the village, he approached Oki and told him something very significant. It turns out Ray said that the guardian of the divine tree cooperates with werewolves and can let them in through the gate at night. The elder saw this himself, hiding in the shadows. Oki did not want to believe it, but did as Ray asked. It turned out that Atra really turned out to be a traitor, which deeply shocked everyone who once trusted him and considered him their protector. The guardian called out to Ray with obvious anger in his voice, his tone harsh and demanding, leaving no room for doubt. Atra asked the young man with surprise and distrust how he could guess that he was the traitor. Ray calmly and confidently answered the keeper that he had a very sensitive sense of smell. Atra had a distinctive werewolf scent that was hard to miss. A pack of werewolves are far from weak opponents, and it is hard to believe that such a guardian could deal with demons alone. It was thanks to this observation that the young man was able to understand that the knight was in league with the werewolves. Otherwise, this whole situation and strange behavior simply would not have made any sense. There was a faint scent of werewolves in the village. It was clear that they were the ones behind the disappearances, and to pass through the divine gates, the help of a guardian was needed. So Atra was undoubtedly a traitor. In addition, Atra lied several times. When he saw off travelers, he assured them that he had inspected the surroundings with the help of divine power. But only a great saint from the imperial capital could do such a thing. The guardian mocked Ray and began to accuse him. After that, the situation became much more complicated and confusing. Atra, overcome with despair and determination, made a cruel decision to simply kill everyone personally so as not to leave anyone a chance to resist. Ray asked the keeper why he cooperated with werewolves. Atra answered briefly and confidently that it was an obvious and understandable choice for him, implying some hidden reason. The young man was able to guess that the knight had entered into a conspiracy with the demons solely for the sake of his own survival, putting personal interests above everything else. Atra believes that werewolves are indeed very powerful, and that is why even holy knights have died fighting them more than once. Their power and cruelty inspire respect and fear. That is why the keeper decided to make a deal with the demons. Ray immediately noticed from his eyes that Atra was already lying, and his words did not inspire confidence. Perplexed, the young man asked the keeper more about the deal itself, trying to understand the true motives and details of this agreement. Atra admitted that he helped the demons with food, and it was for this service that he was spared, left alive. Apparently, it was because of this union that the guardian opened the divine gates and let the werewolves into the village. The keeper confirmed that Ray's guess was correct, thus confirming the correctness of his assumption. Only now it doesn't matter anymore. Atra continues to threaten, declaring that he will kill Ray and anyone else who stands in his way. In the traitor's opinion, this is where it will all end. The guardian said that if he killed the very man who defeated the werewolves, he would definitely be promoted. After that, he would no longer have to work at an unloved job and spend his life in this village. The young man said that he didn't care, because if the village was destroyed, then the guardian of the divine tree would no longer be needed. In that case, his role and duties would lose all meaning. Ray asked Atra why he decided to become a holy knight and what exactly prompted him to make such a choice in life. In response, the traitor asked again to clarify what exactly the young man was talking about. To become a holy knight, one must accept the divine power. If it does not take root, there is a risk of death. After going through this dangerous test, one can become a holy knight. The young man asked Atra if he was right. The traitor confirmed that what was said was indeed true. According to Ray, when someone is willing to risk their life, it is either for a large reward in the form of money or for someone very dear and important to them, for whom they are willing to make any sacrifice. Since he went through this difficult test, it means that his motivation was really strong. Most likely, it was for someone very important and dear. The traitor confirmed that this was indeed the case, without denying or hiding his true feelings. Atura received this power precisely in order to protect those people who were truly dear and important to him, and for whom he was ready to go through any trials. The Guardian suddenly remembered an important story from his family and, thinking, asked Ray if he had ever heard of this incident, which played a significant role in his life. The young man sympathizes with the traitor's feelings, but firmly believes that revenge in this situation makes no sense and will not bring the desired result. In this regard, Ray asked the keeper to stop. The traitor shouted excitedly that Ray did not understand anything, because at that very moment, everything that Atra had was taken away from him, and he could not in any way prevent it or change anything. The Guardian believes that it is too late now. No matter what Ray says, the traitor's family can no longer be brought back. For the traitor himself, his loved ones were his whole life and the meaning of his existence. Because of this, the traitor is ready to go to extreme measures and kill all the inhabitants of not only his village, but even the entire country, sparing no one for the sake of his goal and rage. Ray concentrated deeply, pushing aside all distracting thoughts, and got serious, preparing for the challenges ahead and the difficult decisions he would have to make. The traitor did not stop at all and continued his aggressive actions. He was already ready to kill Ray without any hesitation. Now someone was needed who could stop the Guardian. The traitor suddenly began to attack Ray with loud cries full of rage and threats, while Ray, in order to defend himself, rushed into a counterattack on Atra, ready to defend his life and loved ones. The traitor had a wife who was his support and the meaning of his life for a long time. The Guardian and his beloved had been friends since childhood, and she had always been very fragile and vulnerable. That's why Atra decided to become a holy knight, to be able to protect her from any threats. The traitor thought that by going through a severe test, he would be able to become a holy knight and gain great power that would open up new opportunities for him. He vowed to use this power not for his own gain, but to protect those dear to him and to always stand on the side of justice, even if it required great sacrifices from him. Atra endured a hellish ordeal, went through many torments and hardships, received divine power, and eventually became a holy knight dedicated to protecting and serving his destiny. Over time, the couple had 2 children, a boy and a girl, which was a real blessing for them. During that period, the keeper felt truly happy and filled with the meaning of life. He swore that he would do everything in his power and, at all costs, to protect family happiness, to value his family and protect it from any threats and dangers. However, this happiness, unfortunately, did not last long. Fate soon presented them with difficult trials. The knight was given the order to become the guardian of a divine tree endowed with great power. He had to carefully protect the remote village of Rudan, which was located in a dangerous area. Atra could no longer be around his family and watch his children grow up, which caused him deep pain and a sense of hopelessness. Although he became a holy knight with the purpose of protecting his family, fate decreed that his duties took away his ability to be with them and protect them directly. The term of service was 10 years, and at the end of it, the knight would be assigned to a new post, perhaps to another village or even a large city where he would continue his duties and protect others. Over time, living in this remote village, the traitor began to gradually lose clarity and understanding of why he needed this enormous power and what goal he was really pursuing. Then a terrible event occurred. The city where the Atra family lived was suddenly subjected to a brutal attack, which forever changed the life of the knight and those he loved. He learned the details later. The government had sent dozens of holy knights there, all but the captain, diamond level. 2 of those knights and half the inhabitants had survived, but the keeper's family was not among them. It seemed completely unreal and unbelievable, but at the same time, Atra deep down understood and accepted the facts that everything that was happening was a harsh and bitter truth that he would have to cope with. After this, new, unexpected facts about the real nature of that mission came to light, which forced Atra to take a new look at his duties. The city was used as a training ground for holy knights. The imperial government did not want to send experienced ones to save a small town, so the new recruits fought in a real battle. Where did all this come from? Of the 4 holy knights sent on a dangerous mission to exterminate werewolves, only 2 survived the ordeal. They told the keeper everything, not suspecting that he lived in that very city. Those 2 survived only because they escaped from a dangerous mission in time. After all, in such situations, it is not strength that wins, but the ability to escape. One of the knights then openly admitted that he valued his life more than the lives of others and would never die during training. Another knight supported his opinion, believing that one should take care of one's life. At that moment, Atra-san, despite all his previous convictions, involuntarily agreed with the words of the escaped knights, realizing that sometimes survival is more important than a heroic death. However, the Guardian himself risked his life, trained as hard as he could, and fought, surviving countless deadly situations. He did all this solely for one purpose: to protect his beloved family. Over time, Atra's heart was filled with pain and inner rupture. The Guardian felt more and more clearly how his soul and heart were slowly crumbling under the weight of losses and broken hopes. On the very day the extermination mission was assigned, he deliberately allowed 2 of the knights to die at the hands of ferocious werewolves. And the other 2 knights who survived in the city? Atra killed with his own hands. Even the werewolf himself could not understand why and how the keeper decided to kill the knights, and asked whether those killed were really Atra's friends. In response, the traitor stated that those people were not his friends. They weren't his friends, they were his enemies after what happened. A familiar of one of the 4 deadly demons appeared, and Alfric is the leader of all werewolves. With the help of the familiar, the main demon contacted Atra. Alfric liked the Keeper's desire to sow chaos in this world because his goals completely coincided with the interests of the werewolves. At that moment, the leader of the werewolves offered Atroa to destroy the Bent Empire together. So the Keeper teamed up with Alfric and immediately set about implementing a plan to destroy the village. When no one was looking, Atra-san secretly let the werewolves into the village, and they silently kidnapped people, sowing fear and horror among the inhabitants who did not even suspect such betrayal. If you gradually reduce the number of residents, taking them one by one, then over time the village will be completely empty and disappear from the face of the earth. Ray listened attentively to everything and, out of surprise and amazement, barely uttered a word, trying to comprehend the important information he had received. It was a carefully thought-out plan to free himself from the curse of the Divine Tree's guardian. However, every time the werewolves took away another victim, the feeling of guilt and deep regret in the guardian's heart only grew stronger. His soul was engulfed in inner chaos, but despite this, he could not stop. The voice and words of the demon Alfric constantly sounded in Atra's head. The Guardian could no longer stop himself. His mind was clouded, and he completely lost control of himself. He no longer understood what exactly he was doing and why he was continuing his actions at all. Should this all be ended once and for all? Atra feels that she can no longer tolerate the situation and wants to finally end it all to find peace and clarity. After Atra kills all the inhabitants and finally gains his long-awaited freedom, he begins to be tormented by one important question. What will actually remain of himself after all this destruction and victims? The Keeper needs to be told something. He is confused and does not understand what he has been fighting for all this time. Atra asks him for an answer, hoping to find the meaning of what is happening. However, the Keeper quickly changed his mind about deviating from his plan, realizing that his family could no longer be brought back, and any doubts now seem pointless to him. Now a serious confrontation begins between Ray and Atra, which will become a decisive stage in their relationship and a test for each of them. Liana asked to wait a little, explaining that it was still dangerous outside, and that safety could not be risked now. Next to Liana stood the children, Shukun and Liz Chan, who were carefully watching what was happening. The girl led the people out of the village to protect them from danger. They have been standing at a safer distance for a long time. At the same time, Ray and Atra are engaged in a fierce and deadly battle where each of them fights to the last. Ray tried his best to concentrate in order to find the weak points and defeat the heated Guardian, who was becoming more and more uncontrollable and dangerous with each passing minute. Atra watched his opponent's movements carefully, preparing to deliver a powerful and accurate kick. The Guardian suddenly attacked and knocked the young man off his feet, depriving him of his balance and the ability to quickly respond to the blow. However, this is far from the end. Ray still has the strength and determination to win this difficult fight. Despite their fatigue, the boys continued the battle, not letting up on the tension and trying to gain the upper hand over the enemy. It was a fluctuation of magical energy and fighting skills honed to perfection without a single weakness. Atra surpassed in strength and skill anyone Ray had ever known. The young man was struck by a monster. Atra holds the prestigious rank of Diamond Holy Knight. demonstrating his superior fighting ability and exceptional status among warriors. Although he is technically listed as a Diamond Holy Knight, his combat ability is closer to that of a Ruby Knight, and when evaluating Atra's strength, it can be considered Class A or higher. He possesses powerful divine power. The power of divine energy is directly related to the feelings and obsession of a person. In Atra, this energy most likely comes from a deep and sincere love for his family. What should be done to calm the Guardian? The trader wondered why Ray was hesitating. Atra, overcome with despair and pain, began to beg the young man to simply kill him so that everything would finally end and he could get rid of his suffering. Suddenly, several people appeared nearby, and among them stood out a girl with a tear-stained face who could not hold back her tears. The Guardian quietly and carefully pointed the sword to the side, as if preparing for an unexpected movement. The trader was concentrating on reciting some mysterious spell, his voice sounding quiet but confident, as if he was calling upon powerful forces. Atra made a decisive decision, to burn everything to the ground, leaving not a single trace. The Guardian changed before our eyes. His appearance became even more terrible and dark, as if the darkness itself had become embodied in him. Everything around was suddenly engulfed in a bright flame that spread rapidly, consuming everything in its path. Atra, filled with anger and frustration, decided to burn all the villagers, believing that Ray was not taking him seriously. The flames, as if fueled by an invisible force, flare up even brighter, casting ominous shadows and illuminating the surroundings with their terrifying light. Seeing the bright flame, Liana instantly ran closer to Ray, her heart beating faster in surprise, and her face reflected deep surprise and anxiety. The Guardian stood firm against Liana's most powerful attack. Despite all her strength and fury, he remained unharmed, without even receiving a scratch. A powerful concentration of magic gradually began to build around, filling the air with energy and foreshadowing something grand. Liana focused and with determination cast a powerful spell called Liberation, hoping to turn the tide of the battle. Atra bitterly stated that Ray had had the perfect chance to kill him then, but for some reason he had not taken that moment. The young man could not understand why the Guardian so desperately wanted to just kill him. With such a powerful force, why would he even take such a long and roundabout route, teaming up with werewolves and using their help? If he wanted to destroy the village, he could easily do it himself. Once again, Atra repeated with grim determination that everything would finally end if he were simply killed, as if he hoped for such a single salvation. He is still deeply confused, unable to figure out what the right thing to do next is. There was still hope to reach the Keeper. Ray sincerely tried to negotiate and convince him to stop the battle, but Atra, overcome with stubbornness, continued his attack anyway. Ray said that if the Keeper continued this way, without changing his approach, then his most precious memories could also burn to ashes, and these memories should never be turned to ashes. The young man insistently asked Atra to remember the faces and voices of those dear to him, whose memories were especially close to his heart. And the Keeper, noticing the tension of the moment, sternly ordered Ray to be silent. The angry Atra firmly believed that feelings that have nowhere to go and that constantly weigh on the soul should simply burn out and disappear without a trace, freeing a person from internal pain and suffering. The trader continued the fierce battle relentlessly, fighting to the last, and Ray, realizing the importance of the moment and the need for help, called Liana to confront the enemy together and change the course of events. The dark-haired girl was suddenly attacked by demons, surrounding her from all sides. But among them there was someone who clearly was not going to give up his life so easily, and was ready to fight until his last breath. The innkeeper is deeply concerned about her children, feeling anxious and confused as she cannot understand at all what exactly is happening around her and why events are developing in this way. Ray was shocked that the werewolf was able to restore his arms and legs. At the same time, the demon's body acquired new forms. Werewolves usually do not have such a powerful force that can cause such changes. Things are going badly. Apparently the werewolf is planning to flee the village. Ray moved away from the divine gate while continuing to fight Atra. If things continue at this rate, the boy will not have time to return and the werewolf will escape from the village. However, not all is lost. Ray turned to Atra with a serious expression on his face, telling him that although the Keeper had indeed lost everything and it seemed that there was no hope left, nevertheless, someone who was dear to the trader could still remain alive. The emotions that were given to the children are also a lie? It seems that the young man managed to touch the most sincere and secret feelings of the keeper, causing deep thoughts and doubts in him. Suddenly, Atra unexpectedly remembered the words of a person dear to him, which had long sounded in his memory and now again acquired special meaning at this decisive moment. The guardian deeply understood that in those difficult moments when the inhabitants were killed one after another, he really felt pain and bitter regret. For Atra, not only his family was important, but also the smiles of the people around him. The guardian, realizing the impending threat, firmly wanted and made the final decision to protect Shu and Liz from the werewolves, ready to stand in their way at any cost. The werewolf was overcome with bewilderment and confusion due to the fact that Atra was aiming at the wrong place. It seemed that the guardian had activated the divine gate with his spear, and it was this action that caused a serious problem for the werewolf, who was planning to kidnap the children and take them to the unknown at that moment. Suddenly, the gates unexpectedly sparkled with a bright and clear light, illuminating the surrounding space. The demon remained completely bewildered, while Atra quickly pounced on the werewolf. In a fierce battle, the keeper defeated the werewolf, demonstrating all his strength and agility. Atra exhaled deeply, feeling tired after a long fight. The children, feeling his care and protection, hugged the guardian warmly and tightly, expressing their gratitude. The children sincerely thanked the traitor for saving them. Liz was overcome with great fear and could not come to her senses. Atra, in turn, believed that he had done nothing special to deserve their gratitude. Ray admitted that putting the children in danger was a mistake on his part. He noted that if the gate had not been activated, the young man would not have had time to save Shu and Liz. It was Atra's sincere feelings that saved the children. The guardian kindly extended his hand to Ray as a sign of support and understanding. It seemed that at that moment, Atra finally found the answer to his tormenting question, which had been bothering him for a long time. The guardian of the divine gate slowly closed his eyes and concentrated deeply, imagining in his mind the image of his family, those for whom he was ready to do everything. Nearby, he clearly saw smiling, happy children, the innkeeper, and other rescued villagers who could now live peacefully without fear and danger. Atra firmly confirmed that he had finally found the answer to his long-standing and tormenting question. The boys shook hands with each other with sincere smiles, showing mutual respect and friendship. At the same time, Ray accepted his defeat calmly and with dignity. One of the companions asked the captain what happened while he is looking at the carcass of a torn rabbit on the ground. The captain replies that ever since they entered the area, he has been constantly seeing animal corpses that were apparently eaten by monsters. The companion remarks that the situation looks bad, and the captain says that they should hurry. The man in the cloak stands in front of Ray and the two children, admitting his defeat. He looks ahead silently while the children stand nearby and smile. The man addresses Ray by name, to which he responds with a surprised look. He apologizes for the inconvenience, to which Ray replies that everything is fine and he is glad he found it. The man asks Shu and Liz to go ahead. The children agree and say goodbye to Watayoni-chan. Atra calls out to Ray, who turns to look at him in confusion. According to the information from the werewolves, the Holy Knights have already approached this village, and as soon as they arrive, the warrior will be taken to the royal capital. The swordsman reacts with surprise to the words of his interlocutor, who continues the story, and says that he will be imprisoned as a dangerous criminal in the huge prison called the Forbidden Dark Abyss, which is under the control of the barrier masters from the Yggdrasil clan. The adventurer agrees that this is most likely exactly what will happen. The prison known as the Forbidden Dark Abyss remains indestructible despite several demonic raids in the past, and the Yggdrasil clan, appointed by the king as gatekeepers, has ruled and guarded the place for hundreds of years. Not only prisoners are sealed inside, but also dangerous monsters, and there are rumors that even an SSS-rank monster is locked deep inside, which is why those who enter this place will never see the light of day again. The adventurer reflects on how people call this place the Cradle of Sin and quietly repeats to himself the name of the Yggdrasil clan, which creates barriers. The warrior silently watches his frozen companion, while the image of a man named Loki appears before his eyes. The interlocutor asks what happened, to which the adventurer first replies that everything is fine, but then begins the sentence with an uncertain if. Ray speculates that if they had arrived earlier, they might have been able to stop the warrior and prevent this tragedy, to which the swordsman asks him not to worry about it. The warrior remarks that there is no point in dwelling on the subjunctive mood and, turning to Ray, adds that they will probably never see each other again, so he wants to say it properly. The warrior thanks Ray and says that this time he did not lose what was dear to him, precisely thanks to his interlocutor. Ray agrees and reflects that no matter what power he gains, he cannot change the past or know the future. The adventurer adds that this is precisely why he intends to use the power he received in Yggdrasil to save those people who can still be saved. A group of people stand under the night sky as a warrior grips the hilt of his sword. Ray and the swordsman look at the assembled group, and the swordsman remarks that this was expected and that he would have done the same. Atra apologizes to Ray for his selfishness and asks him to look after the villagers until the Holy Knights arrive, and also asks him to tell them that he was killed by werewolves, to which Ray shouts out his interlocutor's name. The warrior thinks about the false report, kneeling before the villagers, while the thought is voiced that the murder of the guardian of the divine tree is a grave crime punishable by death. The adventurer realizes that this is why Atra asked him to lie to the Holy Knights about his death at the hands of werewolves. As if the kingdom learned the truth about the villagers' involvement, they would not be able to return to peaceful life. The man asks if he is aware of his status as the guardian of the divine gate, to which the swordsman answers in the affirmative with a smile. The older man apologizes for everything that happened up to this point and laments that if he had been there to help Atris sort out her feelings, it wouldn't have driven him into a corner. The warrior objects, claiming that the old man is not responsible, and admits that because of him, dozens of people were sacrificed in this village. The swordsman adds that it is for this reason that he will not complain even if he is killed. The older man replies that they wouldn't even think about killing Atra, while a group of women confirm that most of them probably hate him deeply, as many have lost their families to werewolves. The old man begins to talk about a certain exception, and at that moment one of the women, Shinoka, steps forward, attracting the swordsman's attention. Atra quietly says Shinoki's name, looking at her sad face. Shinoka states that she cannot forgive him because he collaborated with the werewolves who took her husband's life, and she will likely continue to harbor this hatred in her heart. The woman falls silent mid-sentence, after which the swordsman feels her suddenly take his hands. Shinoka adds that the facts remain the same. He saved Shu and Liz and has been protecting the village up until this point. Shinoka expresses gratitude on behalf of herself and everyone else, repeating her sincere words of appreciation several times to the stunned Atra. The warrior can't contain his emotions and mumbles something incoherently in response, realizing that he still had people who thought about him and were important to him. Shinoka falls to her knees and begs for forgiveness through tears, while the warrior bows deeply before the villagers and the elderly man. The old man sadly addresses the guardian of the divine tree. The children call out to Atra in confusion, and Shinoka covers her face with her hand, unable to contain her emotions. Ray watches this scene from the sidelines, standing at the entrance to the building, while the swordsman continues to bow before the assembled people. A girl named Liana approaches Ray, and as they look at each other, the idea is expressed that lingering negativity has created wounds that ultimately become the fuel for moving forward. The adventurer asks his companion if she is injured, to which Liana answers in the affirmative, and Ray expresses joy about this. Ray is addressed by name again as he reflects on Atra and the villagers taking a step into the future. The village chief turns to Liana and admits that he doesn't know how to thank her, while she and Ray tell him not to worry and also thank him for helping evacuate the people. Liana haltingly replies that she doesn't deserve gratitude at all, as she put the children, Shu and Liz, in danger, to which her companion places a reassuring hand on her head. Ray praises Liana for her work, to which she shyly thanks him. Suddenly, a voice is heard saying that they are apparently late, causing the adventurer and warrior to turn sharply towards the sound. The armored warrior stands with his back to the action, watching as Ray looks in his direction as a line about a certain person is heard. A detachment of Royal Knights from the Blue Dragon Division, led by Captain Terezd, is approaching the scene.